Hello, Dr. Thangarajan. Hello.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, Manikandan, sir.
Uh, sir, am I audible?
Yes, sir, I'm here. Just give me a couple of minutes. Good morning. Yes, sir. Good morning. I'm ready. So, Dr. Tyagarajan. Hello, Dr. Tyagarajan. So, others, can you hear me?
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Sir.
Nice to see you.
Yes, sir, your audio and video is good, sir.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, sir. Let me wait for another couple of minutes. Let us to participants to join, sir.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Okay, sir. We will try it.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. It's clear. Human-centered design thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sir. We are getting your presentation, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. So I'll just try something politely. Let's see how it goes.
So, Dr. Manikandan, sir, shall
Yes, sir.
we start the session, sir?
Sure.
Okay. So, good morning to everyone. So, I welcome you all for our AIST sponsored faculty development program on design thinking, organized by Department of Mechanical Engineering, Sri Manakala Engineering College. Now, I invite Dr. Ravi Kumar, Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. K.S.Manikandan.
Okay, thank you, Dr. A. Tyagarajan. Good morning to every one of you present here. On this fresh morning session, it gives immense pleasure in welcoming the guest of today's program, Dr. K.S. Manikandan completed his UG program as a mechanical engineer in College of Engineering, Guindy, Anna University, and achieving gold medal in graduation. He started his career in Hindustan Aeronautic Limited, an aerospace company, and also worked in TVS Motors Limited, an automotive firm. With his progressive growth and engineering profession, Dr. K.S. Manikandan completed his doctorate in management from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and currently holds the position of Associate Professor, Strategy at Indian Institute of Management, Tiruchirappalli. His area of teaching includes competitive business strategy, corporate strategy, and strategic leadership. Dr. K.S. Manikandan is an academician. His research is focused on the growth and governance of business group organizations and study of drivers of strategic choice in firms. Dr. K.S. Manikandan research has been published in leading global management journals such as the Harvard Business Review and the Strategic Management Journal, and has been cited in international business journals such as The Economist. He has presented his research at leading international conferences, including the Academy of Management and the Strategic Management Society. He has conducted sessions on the growth strategy for executives of organizations like V. Corporation, United Health Group, Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited, India Post, Indian Oil Corporation Limited, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, and Power Grid Corporation of India. Dr. K.S. Manikandan has done case studies in reputed companies in enhancing the business strategies. The case studies mainly include leading the Tata Group A, the Ratan Tata EX, available through Harvard Business School Publishing, leading the Tata Group B, the Cyrus Mystery EX, available through Harvard Business School Publishing. He has obtained many awards like Learning Action Award in the year 2020 from the European Foundation for Management Development, Best Case Award in the year 2017, and the Directors Merits Award in the year 2008 from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and the Directors Merits List from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore in the year 2007. Dr. K.S. Manikandan has made remarkable achievement in the areas of teaching and research, and also invention and extension activities. We are very proud to have wonderful personality for this session. We are very eager to hear your valuable speech, sir. Now I request Dr. K.S. Manikandan, sir, to address the session. It's so out to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ravi Kumar, for that introduction. Right, you have been more than kind. Thank you, Dr. Tyagarajan, for giving this opportunity. So, as Dr. Ravi Kumar said, my training was as an engineer. So it is always good to be part of the ecosystem of engineering colleges. That reminds me of my days at College of Engineering, Guindy. Of the several things Dr. Ravi Kumar mentioned, the one thing that I am kind of really happy about, excited about doing every day is about being a teacher like all of you, right? So it's great to be part of this program and share whatever knowledge or learning that I have had in my B school on design thinking with you. I think it would be kind of a very useful experience for me as well. Okay, so we have two back-to-back sessions today. And I think for the last 3 days, you've already undergone several sessions on design thinking. When Dr. Tyagarajan asked me to be part of this program, I made a request to him that to have my session either in the first day or on the last day, right? Because what I'm going to do today is to try to give you the entire perspective of the entire design thinking process. I want to walk through the entire design thinking process, the various stages. I'm also going to use certain examples and along the way through videos for you to understand the process. Then maybe you can discuss among yourself and how do we take this process and integrate with the engineering curriculum that you handle in your respective colleges. So I asked him do it either in the first day so it can serve as an overview, or in the last day so that it can serve as a conclusion, right? So I think the last 3 days you have undergone many sessions. Some of you might have read about design thinking already before this program also. Some of you may be teaching some of the elements of design thinking in your classes. So I am approaching this session as a kind of consolidation of all the learnings that you have had in the last 3 days. You can connect the various pieces as we go along in the presentation or the process that I make. So that is my idea, right? I understand that we have a fairly large audience, but I'll try to keep it interactive as much as possible. Maybe like it might be very difficult to address the chat box on a continuous basis. Maybe every now and then we'll take a break and then I can open up for questions before I proceed to the next chapter of presentation. Is that fine with all of you? So you can, the Zoom has this emoji of raising hands or thumbs up or doing that, so you can do that. I think, so this is a request that I make to my students. I think all of you as teachers, especially in the last 3 months, would empathize with my request, right? So I request at least some of you, right? I understand there are very many constraints like network issues and other constraints, but to the extent possible, those who can you please turn on your videos, right? So that it becomes okay for me. Otherwise, you would all empathize with me. You would have done many sessions. It's very kind of de-energizing to talk to an empty screen, right? So, and as my slide says, it's the design thinking process is inherently human-centered. So it is nice to have a human face when we have this presentation. So those whoever can switch on, please switch on the video. So I think there is, host is not allowing. So Dr. Tyagarajan, is it possible to switch on the video?
Yes, sir. Now they can do it.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Right, but you can all keep your audio on mute, right? In case inadvertently it need not disturb all of us. Whenever you speak, you can switch on the audio and then switch it off back. I think they have given you permission to switch on the video now. Those who can, please switch on. Right? Maybe we can even take turns. What Tyagarajan sir, we can say in the first 30 minutes, some people will turn on, in the next 30 minutes, some other people will turn on. Right? If there is a concern of turning it on for 3 hours. Thank you, madam. Thank you. Okay, so I hope more of you will turn on as we go on. But let's begin with today's session, right? So I'm going to begin with a question, right? On how many of you consider yourself to be creative? Right? Maybe you can, if you consider yourself as creative, you can unmute yourself. So that will be a signal to me that you have raised your hand and you said like you are a creative person. Right? Or you can raise your Zoom also has this option of raising, doing some emoji. So you can also do that. Okay, some of you have unmuted yourself to indicate that you are creative, so that's good, right? So, so you can unmute mute yourself back, right? So that you don't want to kind of inadvertently disturb others. Okay, so this is a question that I often ask my students in the MBA class. And as you know, like most of the MBA class across India are filled with engineers, right? Just like me, right? There are many, almost a bulk of the class, 90% of the class are engineers, and most of them respond. Some of them respond they are creative. Some of them respond they are not creative. Some of them respond they are not creative enough, right? So I ask them, right, were they creative at any point in time in their life, and what happened to creativity? And I also ask them why creativity is important. Right? Creativity is important in any kind of human endeavor, right? So whether as a manager I'm trying to solve a managerial problem, I need to come with new solutions because I'm handling problems day in and day out. Creativity is not only with designing, drawing, paintings or art, etc. It's also about solving problems. As engineers, we face engineering problems with several constraints, and then we have to come up with a novel way of solving the problem within the resources that we have needs a spark of creativity, right? So creativity is very important skill, but for a large extent, it is not part of our education system right from the school days, right? And I think these kind of programs kind of help it back, right? So I'm going to start this class with a small TED Talk video by a person called Tom Kelly, who is the founder of this consulting firm called IDEO in US, which designed several important things like the computer, mouse, etc. And they are the ones who came up with this concept of design thinking. And in this small 10-minute video, he's going to talk about creativity and how design thinking processes relate to that. Right? I want you to listen to that video. Right? When we come back, I'm going to ask some of you to share your observations or learnings from the video, and then use that to progress further in the class. So I'm going to play it from YouTube. I think it will play well for all of you, just like as my video is playing now. I'm also going to enable the captions so that you can be able to follow it, right? Sometimes it becomes difficult because there is sometimes a lag, right? So let me kind of share the screen.
Do you want to start?
So are you able to see the YouTube screen? Are you able to see the YouTube screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You are getting a YouTube.
Yes.
Creative confidence.
I wanted to talk to you today about creative confidence. I'm going to start way back in the 3rd grade at Oakdale School in Barberton, Ohio. I remember one day my best friend Brian was working on a project. He was making a horse out of the clay that our teacher kept under the sink. And at one point, one of the girls that was sitting at his table, seeing what he was doing, leaned over and said to him, "That's terrible. That doesn't look anything like a horse." Right? And Brian's shoulders sank, and he wadded up the clay horse and he threw it back in the bin. I kind of never saw Brian do a project like that ever again. And I wonder how often that happens, you know? It seems like when I tell that story of Brian to my class, you see, a lot of them want to come up after class and tell me about their similar experience, how a teacher shut them down or how a student was particularly cruel to them. And they some kind of opt out of thinking of themselves as creative at that point, right? And I see that opting out that happens in childhood, and it moves in and becomes more ingrained even by the time you get to adult life. So we see a lot of this. You know, when we have a workshop or we have clients in to work with us side by side, eventually we get to the point in the process that's kind of fuzzy or unconventional. And eventually these big shot executives whip out their BlackBerries and they say they have to make really important phone calls and they head for the exits. And they're just so uncomfortable. When we track them down and ask them what's going on, they say something like, "I'm just not the creative type." But we know that's not true. If they stick with the process, if they stick with it, they end up doing amazing things. And they surprise themselves just how innovative they and their teams really are. So I've been looking at this kind of fear of judgment that we have, you know, that you don't do things, you're afraid you're going to be judged. If you don't, you know, say the right creative thing, you're going to be judged. And I had a major breakthrough when I met the psychologist, Albert Bandura. I don't know if you know Albert Bandura, but if you go to Wikipedia, it says that he's the 4th most important psychologist in history. You know, like Freud, Skinner, somebody in Bandura. Bandura is 86 and he still works at Stanford. He's just a lovely guy. And so I went to see him because he's just worked on phobias for a long time, which I'm very interested in. He had developed this way, this kind of methodology that ended up curing people in a very short amount of time. Like in 4 hours, he had a huge cure rate of people who had phobias. And we talked about snakes. I don't know why we talked about snakes. We talked about snakes and fear of snakes as a phobia. And it was really enjoyable, really interesting. He told me that he'd invite the test subject in, and he'd say, you know, there's a snake in the next room, and we're going to go in there. And to which he reported that most of them replied, hell no, I'm not going in there. Certainly if there's a snake in there. But Bandura has a kind of a step-by-step process that was super successful. So he'd take people to this like two-way mirror looking into the room where the snake was. And he'd get them comfortable with that. And then through a series of steps, he'd move them, and they'd be standing in the doorway with the door open, and they'd be looking in there, and he'd get them comfortable with that. And then many more steps later, kind of baby steps, they'd be in the room, they'd have like a leather glove, like a welder's glove on, and they'd eventually touch the snake. And when they touched the snake, everything was fine. They were cured. In fact, everything was better than fine. These people who had lifelong fears of snakes were saying things like, look how beautiful that snake is. And they were holding it in their laps, right? Bandura calls this process guided mastery. I love that term, guided mastery, right? And something else happened. These people who went through the process and touched the snake ended up having less anxiety about other things in their lives, right? They tried harder, they persevered longer, and they were more resilient in the face of failure, right? They just gained a new confidence. And Bandura calls that confidence self-efficacy, right? The sense that you can change the world and that you can attain what you set out to do. Well, meeting Bandura was really cathartic for me because I realized that this, famous scientist had documented and scientifically validated something that we've seen happen over, for the last 30 years, that we could take people who had the fear that they weren't creative, and we could take them through a series of steps, kind of like a series of small successes, and they turned kind of fear into familiarity. And they surprised themselves. The transformation is amazing. We see at the D School now all the time, people from all different kinds of disciplines, they think of themselves as only analytical. And they come in and they go through the process, our process, they build confidence, and now they think of themselves differently. And they're totally emotionally excited about the fact that they walk around thinking of themselves as a creative person. Right? So I thought one of the things I'd do today is take you through, and show you what this journey looks like. To me, that journey looks like Doug Dietz. Doug Dietz is a technical person. He designs medical imaging equipment, large medical imaging equipment. He's worked for GE, and he's had a fantastic career. But at one point, he had a moment of crisis. He was in the hospital looking at one of his MRI machines in use when he saw a young family and his little girl. And that little girl was crying and was terrified. And Doug was really disappointed to learn that nearly 80% of the pediatric patients in this hospital had to be sedated in order to deal with this MRI machine. Right? And this was really disappointing to Doug because before this time, he was proud of what he did. He was saving lives with this machine. But it really hurt him to see the fear that this machine caused in kids. About that time, he was at the D School at Stanford taking classes. He was learning about our process, about design thinking, about empathy, about iterative prototyping. And he would take this new knowledge and do something quite extraordinary. He would redesign the entire experience of being scanned. And this is what he came up with. He turned it into an adventure for the kids. He painted the walls and he painted the machine, and he got the operators retrained by people who know kids, like, children's museum people. And now, so when the kid comes, it's an experience. And they talk to him about the noise and the movement of the ship. And when they come, they say, okay, you're going to go into the pirate ship, but be very still because we don't want the pirates to find you. And the results were super dramatic. right? So from something like 80% of the kids needing to be sedated to something like 10% of the kids needing to be sedated. And the hospital and GE were happy too, because you didn't have to call the anesthesiologist all the time, they could put more kids through the machine in a day. So the quantitative results were great. But Doug's results that he cared about were much more qualitative. He was with one of the mothers waiting for her child to come out of the scan, and when the little girl came out of her scan, she ran up to her mother and said, "Mommy, can we come back tomorrow?" Right? And so I've heard Doug tell the story many times of his personal transformation and the breakthrough design that happened from it. But I've never really seen him tell the story of the little girl without a tear in his eye. Doug's story takes place in a hospital. I know a thing or two about hospitals. A few years ago, I felt a lump on the side of my neck. And it was my turn in the MRI machine. It was cancer. It was the bad kind. I was told I had like a 40% chance of survival. So while you're sitting around with the other patients in your pajamas and everybody's pale and thin, and you're waiting for your turn to get the gamma rays, you think of a lot of things. Mostly you think about, am I going to survive? And I thought a lot about, what was my daughter's life going to be like without me? But think about other things. I thought a lot about, what was I put on earth to do? What was my calling? What should I do, right? And I was lucky because I had lots of options. We'd been working in health and wellness and K through 12 and the developing world, and so there were lots of projects that I could work on. But I decided, and I committed to at this point, that the thing I most wanted to do was to help as many people as possible regain the creative confidence they lost along their way. And if I was going to survive, that's what I wanted to do. I survived, just so you know. I really believe that when people gain this confidence, and we see it all the time at the D School and at IDEO, that they actually start working on the things that are really important in their lives. We see people quit what they're doing and go in new directions. We see them come up with more interesting and more ideas so that they can choose from better ideas. And they just make better decisions. So I know at TED you're supposed to have a change the world kind of thing, isn't that? Everybody has a change the world thing. If there is one for me, this is it, to help this happen. So I hope you'll join me on my quest. You as kind of thought leaders, it would be really great if you didn't let people divide the world into the creatives and the non-creatives like it's some God-given thing. And to have people realize that they're naturally creative, and that those natural people should let their ideas fly. That they should achieve what Bandura calls self-efficacy, that you can do what you set out to do, and that you can reach a place of creative confidence and touch the snake. Thank you.
Okay, so did you want to share any of your thoughts on that small talk? So I don't think just now we saw the video, right? So we should not be having this fear of judgment. So feel free to speak up, right? Anyone who wants to share can unmute themselves, introduce their name and talk.
Good morning, sir. Gurpreet this side from New Delhi.
Yes, Dr. K. Yes.
So I am a CBSE educator, and right now I am working as a freelance consultant and trainer. So I really enjoyed, and for me, I think creativity is one of the critical skills that we are talking about today. If we see the ranking, so creativity is now probably one of the top 2 skills that we are looking at globally, which companies consider before they hire. And having said that, I feel as educators, we need to first imbibe that thing in us before taking it forward to our students. So for me, creativity is really important. And I think it is a very vital skill that we all need to bring it into our classroom. So creativity versus creative teaching versus teaching creatively. I think all these three things combined will make up a big difference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gurpreet. Anyone else would like to share before we move on? Maybe one more person can share their view. Okay. Dr. Shaiktasima Kausar, you also told it's a great video. Like, can you just share like what interested in you in the video? Like what message was exciting for you?
Good morning, sir. Myself, Nazima Kausar from Bhimreddy Institute of Management Science, Adoni. I'm from MBA department. I think creative thinking and creativity is one of the most important thing nowadays. We are missing out for the students, and more opportunities and chance should be given for the students for creativity. And while teaching, first of all, I think the teachers should have that creative knowledge and thinking so that it can be taught to the students and imbibed in the students, or give them opportunity to do something creative. So last year we had an opportunity where we conducted a program where students were allowed to do something creative out of scrap, like a scrap art. And many students have done many beautiful things through that. And it was a good experience for myself, my management and colleagues, as well as to the students. So I think more such kind of things should be given opportunities to the students and to the faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kausar. Right. So we all understand, right? Whether it is a CBSE school, whether it is a business school, whether it is an engineering school, creativity becomes a very important skill, right? That we need to kind of develop. And as Kelly mentions here, all of us are endowed with that skill, right? So the reason I like this particular video is the example that he talks about, right? So where he takes an example of fear of snakes and how a psychologist puts someone who is having fear of snakes through a step-by-step process so that their fear is removed. Just like that, many of us have this fear of creativity, right? Including me. Like I had this huge doubt of whether I can do something innovative or something new, whether it is inside the class or in my other walks of life, etc. That's one reason I got excited or wanted to learn about design thinking. And he uses as an example because he says design thinking is that step-by-step process to remove our fear of creativity. So it is just nothing but a series of small steps. If we can do it individually and with teams together in organizations or in teams of people, if we can follow that step-by-step process with certain principles and certain practices, all of us will be able to come with certain creativity, creative new ideas, and over a period of time, we might even come with very, very innovative ideas, right? So just he gave this example of this is an engineering solution. The person was designing an MRI. Is an engineer, right? He requires that, right? So, but see the way he has designed it now. So, if you just look at it superficially, it might seem, oh, this is nothing but he has done some drawings or he has done some drama here, right? But the kind of impact that it had on the child that is undergoing the MRI machine, right? And the kind of quantitative impact that it was as the hospital is used, right? And that's when this creative process becomes important. And the process that he talks about is what is called as design thinking process, right? So that's the step-by-step process. And this is something that is gaining attention in different organizations. Different big companies are looking at design thinking, right? Whether it is TCS, whether it is Infosys, whether it is IBM, everyone is talking about design thinking in one way or the other. Design thinking is increasingly sought after as an important skill in managers. It is true for engineers as well, right? So in fact, one of the biggest proponents of design thinking, the early proponents of design thinking is the Stanford School, right? Which had this separate school called D School to promote design thinking as a process. So and it is something that is useful for managers or teachers or educators or public policy. I hope by the end of the next 2 hours, we'll realize that it can be useful in whatever walk of life that we come in, right? And it is so simple, right? It just requires us to stick to that process and go through that step-by-step process. It is not as kind of tough as engineering, right? Or rocket science. It's much, much simple, right? So So what is exactly is design thinking, right? The first thing I want to kind of point out is that I have kind of highlighted the word thinking, right? It is more about the thinking process. It's more about how you approach problem solving. It's more about how you engage with others and work in teams to solve the problem than design itself, right? So it is something like that process which these designers used, and they found that process can be applied to anywhere, right? So what is this process? What does it comprise of, right? So it is not on the noun, it is more on the verb. It is on the thinking, and it is about an approach and a mindset. So what I'm going to do now is to talk about certain principles and the entire process of design thinking. So broadly, design thinking process can be considered to have three phases or three stages. There is an exploration phase, followed by a concepting phase, followed by a prototyping phase. So I will go and talk about each of them in detail now, right? So, but I'm going to give you a broad idea, right? So maybe I think the first day you add a 5-step process: empathy, define, empathy, and test, right? Ideate, test, etc. Right? So refine and test. So that 5-stage process can be easily mapped onto this 3 phase. As we discussed, you will understand. But there are 3 broad phases. They are done sequentially, but they are also done in a iterative manner. Now let's go and look at each one of them and understand what this phase is about. Let's start with the exploration phase. What is the first step in a design thinking process, and what is the role of this phase, right? So the objective of this particular stage, the first phase, as the name suggests, is to explore, right? So we want to understand, we are looking at a problem. We want to develop a 360-degree view of the problem, right? And the goal here is to understand what are the unsaid, unmet, latent needs of the user or the customer, right? So what are the challenges that we want to solve in this design process? So that is the output that we want to have at the end of this exploration phase, and that is the objective, right? Now let me ask some of you a question, right? So why is it important to understand the unmet need or unsaid need of the user or the customer? Why is it important for someone to understand an unmet or unsaid need of a customer? Would anyone like to kind of answer that? Okay, what is your understanding of unmet need or unsaid need of a customer?
So if I may answer that question.
Yes,
Yeah, Gurpreet. Yeah. So according to me, sir, all big tech giants, if you see, or any successful company you see, what they are doing is they are doing a lot of data analytics and trying to see what is the need of the people, and then tweak the products or the offerings that they have to suit the market, and that is what is making them successful. So the unmet needs of the customer study is very, very important if you want to kind of hit the market with you want to be have a successful. That's just my thought. Thank you.
okay, so thank you, Dr. Gurpreet. Right, so it's about the unmet need of the customer, as you pointed out, and several of you are also writing here. Gaurav, you talked about it's a pain point and to make our product marketable, right? So these are certain real life problems. That's a problem that these users have or customers have that we want to solve so that we can add value and we can also make a profit in that sense. So we can make a difference. But Gaurav, Chaitanya, if I may just ask you to expand on that, why do you think it could be difficult for companies, organizations, or people to understand these unmet, unsaid needs of the customer? Why would it be difficult? Gaurav? or Ms. Zankana. You can also use Zankana or Selvaraj. You can also answer like why it might be difficult for an what could make it challenging for an organization to understand these unmet unsaid needs of the customer or the user.
Hello.
Yes.
Myself Jhankana.
Yes.
I think like it might be implying the empathize phase. So organizations may not exactly understand the multifaceted problems, and like as you gave example of CT scan machine. So for a kid, it could be like a horrifying place or something. So we as an organization have to think from the perspective of a child, that what could be his or her problem. So I think having empathy and placing oneself in place of the customers, and that's so in general, like need of one customer may be different from other, or problem faced by one customer may be interpreted different from the problem of another customer. So that having consensus about solutions of problems could be really challenging. That is like my understanding.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I think you made some very good points. Like the customer needs might differ from each from one person to the other person, and it's very difficult. The goal here is for an organization to develop empathy for the user, right? So understand from the user's perspective or the customer's perspective what the problem is, right? That's the challenge. Would anyone like to just add to what he's saying before we move on? Right, so Selvaraj has also talked about the same thing, right? As unique, or every customer is kind of different. So the goal here, right, is in this stage, in the exploration phase, is to go into the world, look at the problem in its context, and develop, as Ms. Zankana said, empathy for the user, right? It is like you want to put yourself in their shoes and feel the same feelings and the frustrations or the joy with regarding to use of a particular product or service, and understand that. And that's really difficult, right? So and it's challenging because most often people will not come openly and say this is what I do, right? So you can think about your experience of several products or several services itself. Very recently, or definitely in your life, you would have come across a product or a service which you bought, which you are not happy about, right? But you make do with something, you do some jugaad, you make some adjustment and still live with that particular product or service. You don't kind of go and articulate. Sometimes customers might not be even know that this is a challenge and the problem can be solved. So they might not open. So it takes a lot of effort, right? It takes effort from the team and from the organization to develop empathy for the user. How do we understand this, right? How do we take from what they think in their minds, and how do you make them articulate it and understand it and develop empathy becomes very important goal in this exploration phase. So the goal is to develop empathy, right? So let's understand what is empathy. All of us know, right? The empathy is about feeling like what others are feeling, like putting yourself in the shoes of others, right? In simple terms, it means you want to make the transition from understanding how customers or users behave. So develop an understanding of why do they behave the way they do, right? Why do they behave the way they do? For example, somebody might say, so Dr. Silvaraj has written here, right? He has written here, I need a metallic flexible mobile holder, right? If I have to just pick that particular example. Our goal here as part of this process is not to just understand Dr. Silvaraj needs or wants a metallic flexible holder. We can develop a better solution, right? If we can understand why Dr. Silvaraj wants a flexible metallic placeholder, right? So you might say like somebody wants a box or a holder which is cylindrical in nature rather than in a cuboid form, right? But that is one thing, right? So that is important to understand. But we have to make this transition from understanding why do they prefer a cylinder versus cuboid to whether they prefer a cylinder or cuboid, to understand why they prefer that particular thing. If we can understand that, then we can come with better solutions that can serve the need, right? So that's the goal here. That's the goal in this particular process of exploration phase. Now, the next question is, what can we do to develop empathy? Are there certain techniques or tools that we can use to develop empathy for the user? I'm going to talk about 4 practices or 4 tools. But before that, I'm going to play a small video, right? And as we saw David Kelly talking in the TED Talk, right? So he is the founder of this consulting company called IDEO in the US. That's the company that has designed several things, including the computer mouse that we use today. And that's the company which has familiarized this design thinking process. They do several design projects with several organizations across the world. I'm going to play some videos of that particular organization team working on a design project for a cinema theater chain, right? So there is a cinema theater chain called Cine Planet in Chile in South America. So these guys hired them to do a design thinking project. I'm going to play small snippets of the team's consulting team's engagement in each of these 3 phases for us to understand what is the goal here, what happens, right? So I'm going to play that video, right? If you don't understand each and every part of the video, it is fine, right? But I want you to look at it in the broad context and infer what they are doing, right? So the goal here, as we know, is to understand empathy, see what they are doing, and understand why they are doing that, and how can that help us develop empathy. Okay, shall I play that video? Is that fine? Is that fine?
The same one, sir, or
No, I'm going to play another video, right? As I told, this is the small team which is working on this project. So this is the exploration phase, a small snippet. Then we will come and discuss what they are doing in that, right? To understand what techniques we can take from them to understand this. So what they are doing in this video is they are visiting a small customer, right? Who generally doesn't go to cinema theater, right? Who generally doesn't go to cinema theater. Very rarely he goes, and he watches most of his movies at his home. So they are doing an interview there, right? Look at the interaction, look at the question, look what they are doing, so that we can pick up certain tips from that or techniques from that to develop empathy. Is that clear, Dr. Tyagarajan?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But
So,
still,
So the guys, like,
yes, now it's playing.
you-
Okay,
you-
okay.
if it's really just like a miniaturization of the going to the theater, if it's comfortable for groups or not.
Yeah, I wonder if he has friends over or dominates it himself.
Because most other people we've met that like watch movies at home, they only do it in like 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, or by themselves.
Usually by themselves or with a partner,
Yeah.
like a girlfriend or.
Right.
We're trying to learn just what types of media they consume and how they consume. So I'm interested in how often he goes to the movies, how much or how little he does online. Is he downloading movies? Is he going to buy DVDs? Because we've seen a lot of those stands around here.
And what does he do with his leisure time?
Yeah.
Not only the movies or...
Yeah.
Yeah, if someone spends that much to create a home theater, I wonder how much he uses it. If it's like every day or if it's more special.
And also, I'm wondering what movies he'll choose to watch in his theater versus your theater.
Vamos a hacer 2 ejercicios para que fluya mejor la conversación.
And the second one is we have some concepts that we think might be interesting for cinema experience. So we're really curious about how you might like the concepts.
Solo dormía a las 3 de la mañana.
Okay, puedes escribir aquí. He sleeps until 11 because his work it's until 11 p.m. And generally he goes to bed at 3 a.m.
Wow.
Estoy hasta la 1 de la tarde.
Puedes escribir. He is studying a course long distance and he he works on internet around noon for an hour approx.
So this is an online course?
Online course. ¿Qué curso estás estudiando?
Administración.
He's studying business administration online. From 2 to 2:15 approx, he has lunch. He only has 15 minutes because he has to be at the office at 3. Generally, 3 times a week, he has lunch here at home and twice a week at the office. Puedes hacer una línea de 3 a 11 y poner oficina. He has a 45-minute break from 6 to 7, but it changes every month. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So during those 45 minutes, he walks around the park and chats with his friends via WhatsApp. He's back home at midnight, and he is awake until 3 a.m. approx, and he is on the internet or watches TV. Y es lo mismo hasta el sábado.
Los sábados también me gustaría poder salir.
I would like to go dancing somewhere on Saturdays, but I'm really tired. I generally wake up late on Sundays, and I watch TV from 11 to 1 approx.
So you find a movie that you want to watch, and then you Google to see when it's released, and then what's the next step before you get to the cinema?
He plans ahead with his family.
Oh.
And they never go on Thursday because they don't have time. And the other thing is that the cinemas are always full on the day of the release. So he tries to go to the last function, or he goes on Sundays.
Maneja sus tiempos y a veces no puede, ¿no? Normalmente voy yo con mis padres, más que todo.
I generally go with my parents. It's not easy to convince them of going. They are always ready to go to the movies. Generally, he is the one who decides, who picks the movie and the time. And he tells his parents, and they are ready. Sometimes they complain about the time because it's a little bit late for them, but that's the only time he has available. Most of the time, he decides a few days in advance, and he uses his cell phone to look for the schedule of the movies in the cinema he wants to watch. And sometimes he uses the YouTube application on the cell phone to see the trailer. So they decide a couple of days in advance.
Do you have your phone with you?
¿Tienes tu teléfono?
Sí, lo voy a traer.
Okay. Yeah, I want to see.
¿Es buena?
Sí.
You like
Es
it?
la continuación de la primera parte, sí, no ha perdido el estilo de la película.
I like that movie.
Did you see the first 300?
Yes.
Yeah.
And his father likes action movies and science fiction, and he's always available for that. Buys popcorn for home, but his brother theater.
So is that here?
¿Es esto acá?
Sí.
Like, how many people? What's the vibe like?
No sé cómo entra todos en el muelle, pero...
In average, there are 6. My brother, his partner, his sisters-in-law, and my parents. And he doesn't know how they all fit in the living room.
What's the best place to sit?
¿Cuál es el mejor sitio en donde te sientas acá en esta sala? ¿Cuál es tu sitio favorito?
En ese lado.
This is his favorite spot.
Right there?
Yes.
Why is that
¿Por
not
qué?
here?
¿Por qué no acá?
Porque, bueno, mi papá, este es su sitio, ¿no? Él no se mueve de acá.
This is my dad's place.
Right.
He likes to be here.
Got it.
Lo que son de ciencia ficción y acción.
At the cinema, he likes to watch science fiction and action movies. He prefers to watch new releases at the cinema.
So it's okay if you didn't follow each and every sentence of it, but broadly, what did you see these guys were doing to understand about this person? Did any of the things that they did kind of looked interesting to you? Right, you can either type in the chat box or you can share here.
Hello.
Yes, Ms. Sankana.
I could interpret 2 things. One, asking the daily routine of that person so that one can understand the problem. And second thing, having feel of his life, so you should leave for some time. How could I say that? Like spending time with that person.
Okay.
2 things I could interpret.
Can you repeat the last one? Having a feel of his life. Last line that you said, I kind of missed it.
Spending time with the person to understand his problem.
Yeah, spending time, right? So that's Yeah, so that's very interesting point. So would anyone like to add to what Ms. Alpana has said? Like gathered information with interview? Yes, definitely they did. Yeah, Gaurav talks about case study of his pattern, how he lives his time, and when he used to watch the movies, right? So first you see several things, right? So first is he is not the one who is going to movie very often. He is someone who takes a lot of effort to create this theater experience in his home and spends time watching movies there, right? But these guys are going and talking to him there. But they're not calling him and talking, or they're not sending a survey and asking him what he is doing. They are going there and spending time with him in the context in which he is doing the watching the movies, so that you can understand the empathy, right? For example, you might have seen two instances where he said, I used to watch the trailer of the movies in mobile phone. Immediately they asked, can you show the mobile phone? Right? And can you see like how do you watch trailers, right? So because they want to understand it from his perspective. Right? Then he says, I used to watch the movies, and he says, can we go to that place, right? Can we sit there, right? And then they ask like, which is the most his favorite scene, and someone sits there to understand what he is doing, right? So that is some of the things that we can pick up from here. The other thing is, as many of you pointed out, to understand his entire life time, how he spends, right? It's just we want to understand movies, but the questions are not only about movies. The question is what happens before he plans movies. The question is what happens after he plans movies, what movies mean to him, etc. Right? To if I have to summarize, right? So the state of mind with which you need to approach this phase, exploration phase, because it's a starting phase to understand, is that all of us go to movies many times, right? So, but we should not approach this saying that we know everything about movie going, right? You need to approach a state of mind which is curious, which is non-judgmental, and which is like even playful like a child, right? To understand like what's actually kind of going on, because as some of you pointed out, each one's unique, the needs are unique, right? And the key is to start with almost an empty sheet of paper to approach the problem afresh, right? So what can we do? What tools can we use, right? I will share 4 tools that you can use in this stage to develop empathy for the user. The first tool is what is called as extreme users, right? So design thinking process and IDEO spends a lot of time understanding the extreme users. Now, who are extreme users and why they are useful, right? Most of the time companies do surveys, right? To understand like what are the preferences of the customers, etc. But most of the average customers, as I said earlier, satisfied. They make do with the things that they have. They don't kind of articulate the unmet or unarticulated needs, or they might lack imagination to come up and say, this is what I want, right? But once you give that product, they will latch onto it and use it, right? So when Steve Jobs came with the smartphone or the iPhone idea, none of us were able to understand like or articulate what he wanted, right? But once he came up, it became a sensation. They may not share or they may not articulate. On the other hand, extreme users. By extreme users, whom do we mean extreme users? Extreme users are people who use your product in very high frequency. So if I have to draw a graph or a normal curve, it is the people at the both ends of the spectrum. People who use a lot of your product multiple times, or people who use your product in very, very minimally. In this case of theaters, theater viewing, maybe it would be someone who goes to every movie that gets released, right? You might want to go and talk to them. He's a fanatic, right? So, or you want to go and talk to them who never goes to a theater or who goes to theater very, very less, right? Why do we want to talk about these people? Because the behaviors and the needs of extreme users are amplified, right? So you'll be able to understand the needs much easily in these people rather than someone who is on the average where the behavior is muted in a way, where it remains latent. But you go to a person who goes every week to a movie, then he will be telling you what needs to be done to improve the performance. But extreme users are not only those who use high frequency or people who have never used your product. Extreme users are also could be users who use your product in a completely different, unexpected manner. Right? For example, a two-wheeler company could have designed a two-wheeler for the transport of 2 individuals or personal use. But then you might then suddenly find someone carrying their entire shop on a two-wheeler, but it was not designed for that, right? So they're using your product in an unexpected manner. So if you go and talk to these people, maybe you'll be able to understand new things that you can do with your products. So you want to look at people who are using your products more or less, people who use your products in unexpected ways, or people who are having certain constraints, right? Say, for example, as teachers, we want to understand how do we develop focus or avoid distraction in classes, right? So, who could be the extreme users in this case, right? One of the extreme users could be, maybe we'll go and pick those students who we know are really focused in every class and every minute and understand what makes them focus, or someone who is not focusing at all. Or we can also go and talk to people who have attention deficit disorders, right? So these are people with inherent constraints, right? By nature, they cannot focus, right? But if we can understand from their point of view, maybe we'll pick some lessons which we can apply to a broader class as well. Or if you're designing, say, a mobile phone, right? So can we, talking to older people, how they use mobile phone with certain vision problems or auditory problems. They are one class of extreme users. Talking to these people with constraints, talking to people who use your different products differently, or people who use more or less, could give rise to amplified behaviors, and then you might be able to pick signals. In an average user, when you do a survey, the signal is weak. You will not be able to develop the empathy that you might want. You want to study the extreme user and see, can I pick something from the learning of the extreme user that I can apply for all the users? So that is the objective. So the first tool is about using extreme users, right? Any questions or thoughts on this before we proceed to the second tool?
Sir?
Yes? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Like, if we go for a survey, then from our data, we used to cut off extreme, that is
Yes,
what
ma'am.
out.
Yeah.
We cut off outliers. And
Yes.
here we are talking about studying only those customers who have extremities. So my question is, are we doing wrong in analysis of our survey?
It is not wrong, right?
Wrong.
Yeah, we are not saying that we should not do survey, but we are pointing out what could be the deficiency of doing only surveys, right? Surveys help because you are talking about the average user, you get a broad picture. But even when you have to do a survey, right, you have to know what questions to ask. But if you want to uncover new things, that might not come in survey very clearly. You might ask a question, what do customers want? But as we discussed earlier, sometimes they're not able to articulate. They themselves might not know. So you have to complement surveys, right? Which are these deductive surveys, deductive way of knowing things with inductive way of reasoning, which is the talking about extreme users. So we want to do both. You want to do a couple of 3 or 4 interviews of extreme users, in-depth interviews, as we saw in the video, plus the surveys. We are not saying surveys are bad. Each of this has its benefit. Each of it has its deficiency. When we use both, and especially when in this process, because we want to come with something new, the probability of you coming up with something new would happen when you complement your surveys with focusing on the extreme users. Is that clear, ma'am?
Okay. So, like what I understood is, if you want to go for in-depth interviews, then outliers would be more better to be chosen as sample.
Sure, definitely. Definitely, outlier would be more useful, right? So there are a lot of engineering teachers here, but there are some people who are in the field of social sciences also, like management, etc. In the field of management or social sciences, knowledge always progresses by looking at an outlier, right? You see some company is doing something unique for the first time, and then you want to understand that. And then you take that knowledge and then tell to others, and others kind of start following it. And then based on that, again, you do a survey to understand how to fine tune it, right? So outliers are very, very useful in any field to talk about, come with new insights or innovations, right? So we should complement broad surveys with focus on outliers or extreme users. Coupled to this is the second tool or the second principle is that go and do in context observation, right? So that's what we noticed in that video also. They went to the place. They could have just called him and asked, right? But you want to do in context observation, not just talk, but you might also just sit back and see what you're doing, right? And understand what is happening, right? Because they might not be able to tell, but based on your observation, you might be able to understand. For example, if I'm doing this project for a theater chain, right? If I want to understand how do people feel or develop empathy for people standing in queue to buy something, it's one thing to ask the question later. Time did you spend in your how much time did you spend in your queue? What did you feel during queue, etc. After they have left the theater. It is another thing if I go and stand with them in the queue when they are standing in the queue and ask them this question. Then the feelings would be kind of real. So the second important thing of design thinking process in the exploration phase is to go to the field and observe them in action. If we are designing a two-wheeler, we want to go before even we do the design or the engineering, we want to go and spend time in the field looking at them, right? Or if you're someone working in, say, Ashok Leyland, trying to develop a truck for someone, you might want to go and one entire day in the truck with a truck driver going on a long journey to understand what his challenges are so that he can come with new solutions. So I'm going to play another small video here. This is a very, very small 2-minute video, right? Very powerful example of how going and observing in the field can really be useful, right? So I'm going to play it. It's just a 2-minute video. It's a YouTube video. I'll try to put the subtitles also. Right? Okay. So this is our friend Tom Kelly again talking about one of his experience, right? About this. Are you able to see the screen?
About 10 years ago, we got approached by one of the largest oral healthcare companies in America, a company you've probably heard of called Oral-B. And they said, look, we'd like a new kids' toothbrush because ours is starting to get commoditized. It looks like a lot of kids' toothbrushes out there, and you can't have that. We want to be special, right? So we say, okay, we'll do this. We want to go out in the field and do some field research. And they're kind of not sure about that. Like, it's not rocket science. We're talking about kids brushing their teeth. How hard could that be, right? They would really like us to stop fooling around and start designing, right? But we want to go through this process, this observation process, because we think almost always you can spot opportunities. And so we go out, and we're on like the first day of observations, and we make a small discovery. The small discovery we make is that every kid's toothbrush in the history of the world has had the same implicit assumption. It's a logical assumption, it just isn't exactly right, which is the assumption always was parents have big hands, kids have small hands, and so when you want to make the kids' version, make it like the parents' brush, only smaller and skinnier. Perfectly logical until you go out in the field, until you actually watch humans, little tiny humans, brushing their teeth. And what you notice right away, you get a 5-year-old boy brushing his teeth, he's not holding his toothbrush in his fingertips the way mom and dad do, he's fisting it. He's holding it like this because he doesn't have the dexterity, he doesn't have the fine motor controls that his parents have, and so he's got to hold it like this. In fact, the other thing he does is he holds the brush too far up very frequently, and so he's punching himself in the face as he's trying to brush his teeth, and we solved that problem too. But the main thing was, came back in the field and said, uh-oh, kids don't need little skinny toothbrushes, kids need big fat toothbrushes, right? Let's make them big fat squishy toothbrushes. And you may have noticed, now every toothbrush company in the world makes these, but our client reports that after we made that little tiny discovery, out in the field, sitting in a bathroom watching a 5-year-old boy brush his teeth, they had the best-selling kids' toothbrush in the world for 18 months. So when you think about power, when you think about, credibility, if you could go out in the field and do that observation and come up with that finding, and your company, your organization was the best in its field for 18 months afterwards, would that be worth it? I think that would be worth it. And so that's this message about think like a traveler, be an anthropologist, use your powers of observation, have that part of your brain turned up as high as you can all
So you saw that very relatable example, very powerful example, right? So unless this team has gone there and looked at how kids actually brush, right? First thing is you could have asked the parents or you could have asked the kids. They themselves might not have been able to tell. Only when you're able to see, then you're able to figure out a problem that they have, and then you solve that problem, and then you design one of the best toothbrushes and you make a lot of profits. So the second key principle in the exploration phase, again, important practice that design thinking process is to spend time in the field, observing what customers are doing. And we need to do that to develop empathy because customers are not able to articulate, right? So that's the second thing that we are talking about, right? So we talk about domain knowledge, and yes, it is domain knowledge, but it is more than that, in the sense that what we are seeing here is that it's just not I can go and read all the things that have been written on toothbrushes in the past. That would be knowledge. But we are also seeing, add to that, you go and go and observe with a fresh pair of eyes so that you might come with new knowledge, right? And that's what they did in this interview, right? So they went to the place and asked him various questions, etc. So these are two things. What could be the third principle or third practice that some of the design thinking firms use, right? So I'm going to put two things here. One is about food wastage, one photo. The other photo is about a turbocharger, right? I want to understand, like, if there are anyone here who's mechanical, teaches mechanical engineering, can you make this connection between these two pictures? So what happens in a, say, an exhaust gas turbocharger? So do you think these pictures are related? Right. So these are two pictures with two different things, right? But they are related in a way, right? And this example I got from one of my students when I did a class on design thinking 2 or 3 months back, right? So let's understand what this is, right? The third principle or the third practice one can use in the exploration phase is to go and study analogous sites, all right? So you want to go and look at related fields where similar kind of things are happening to understand a greater knowledge about the problem, right? So, for example, when this IDEO team wanted to understand how people go and watch movies in cinema theaters, they also spend time visiting parks and churches in Chile to understand as part of their project. On one hand, one can say these guys are using the client's money just to go around Chile and make fun and visiting parks and not related to theaters at all. But the truth is, they want to understand if theater is a place where people go and spend time together, what are the other places where people go and spend time together? Can we go and understand what happens there? How does socializing happen there? So they went to parks, they went to churches and understand. So the third practice that these guys follow is that going and studying different fields from the problem field to understand another angle of the problem, right? So I've used the picture of someone here. Can someone, I think some of you will be able to identify this person, right? Can you identify who is this person? Right? Maybe someone in North will be able to understand or identify this person. No, it is not Kurana. His name is Veer Das. He is a stand-up comedian, right? He is a stand-up comedian who does a lot of stand-up comedy shows, right? And see, if I am a teacher, right, and I want to kind of understand how do I keep the attention of my class, and then if I do a design project of trying to understand how do I develop attention and gather the attention of the class for extended period of time. What is I can go and talk about, understand what happens in class. But what this principle will tell me is that can I go and talk to another context which are right? So in that sense, okay, Dr. Raja, you want to say something? So you just hold on, I'll come back to you, right? So in that context, Analogous side for me would be a stand-up comedian, right? Who is again a person who is standing up in front of a group of people, trying to talk and keep their attention. So I can study stand-up comedians, and we can study stand-up comedians to understand what techniques do they use to keep the attention of the group for a long period of time. What techniques do they use when the attention kind of dips to bring the attention back, etc. Right? So, do you agree? Can we learn from stand-up comedians on this front? Do you think there is a possibility to learn from these guys on how to kind of keeping the attention of the group of people that we talk to? Do you think, don't you agree that in that sense, the job is kind of similar? At least one part of the job. Right, and that's the third principle here, studying analogous sites. Now, can you make the connection between this? We were talking about this example of how do we reduce wastage of food in mess. Somebody gave this example of, yes, Ms. Jamuna. Yes, Dr. Okay, so anyone else want to kind of now make this connection between these two? So what happens in a turbocharger is this, right? So turbocharger is nothing but a small turbine and a compressor, which is used in automotives to kind of increase their power. So what they do is they send the compressed air back into the engine so that it can be more efficient and more power can come. And to run that, they use a turbine, and that turbine is run with the exhaust gas. So whatever exhaust is coming out of the engine runs the turbine, which runs a compressor, which sends the compressed air back into the engine. So the waste exhaust, right, the heat or the thermal energy in the waste exhaust is being used productively or recycled to increase the efficiency of the entire engine. So that's what somebody said, like maybe we can go and study factories, right, or industries, how they handle waste and whether there is a possibility to recycle them, right? So now that's an idea that you're taking, and then you want to understand how that we can apply into the mess. Maybe then you can build on that idea. Somebody can then say that we can recycle the food and come with other kind of food, or we can recycle the food or waste food into fertilizer, which can be gone into a garden, which can again serve the mess, right? So that's how these students were able to see the connection, right? So are you getting this example now? Right. So the third idea is studying analogous sites. Just not look at your context. Can you go and look at other contexts also? The fourth tool or practice that these people use is in addition to doing in-depth interviews of extreme users or observation, they also go and talk to experts. Experts both in the internal to your organization and external. For example, if we are talking about this theater chain as example, right? As part of the project, these guys also went and talked to people who work in video stores, right? Because those people will be able to know, like, what are the preferences, what kind of genres are people prefer to watch in general, what do they watch to prefer in theaters, what do they want to watch in home, etc. Right? So they also talk to people who were in piracy business or who are dealing with piracy to understand how that impacts. So you also want, as part of this exercise, to look at expert users, experts both internal to your organization and experts to the organization as well, right? So let me ask you this question to understand this, right? So in the previous slide, I talked this example of taking up a project of reducing wastage of food in student mess. Right, as part of that project, I can go and look at people, extreme users there. I can go and spend time in the mess, watching what's happening and how people eat and how people waste, etc. What could be the other kind of persons apart from the user, both internal to the organization of the college or external experts that I can talk to have a holistic understanding of this particular problem, reducing wastage of food in student mess? Because there is something that we all know about also. What kind of people internally to the organization what kind of experts externally to the organizations can be useful to talk to understand about this issue? Anyone?
So I think internally, so the mess, in charge, and the student coordinators, whoever would be, taking care of the mess thing, that would be one thing. Also, the people who are preparing the food. So
Okay.
that is internal. External, according to me, would be students who are staying at home and, eating the food, home cooked food. So that would, I think, be an external factor which we need to study. And also, why would a student go to a restaurant when your home cooked food is very good?
Yeah.
In that case, so I think for me these will be the two external things that I would like to explore.
In terms of definitely we have to talk to all these people just to talk about the conceptually to make clarity about this particular point. You identify the right internal experts, right? The mess in charge or someone who's cooking, right? They will know like which food they have to cook again, which food kind of gets left over, or maybe the person who's collecting the waste, right? That person might actually know on what it is, what kind of food get wasted more, right? More than the mess in charge themselves, right? Very good to talk to these internal experts. But when we talk about external people, the examples that we talk about, I would categorize them as analogous sites, right? So people who are day scholars or the same hostelers when they go to a restaurant, how do they behave? So different site, same problem, right? But we are talking about experts here. Who could be some of the experts who are related to this particular problem? That maybe you want to go and talk to a doctor, right, or a psychologist. Why
Psychologist, yeah, yes.
So that could be something, or a nutritionist, right, to understand how people consume food, etc. So you want to have a 360-degree view of the problem. That's why we are saying, apart from users, you also talk to experts, right? So as we said, the goal of the exploration phase is to develop empathy about any design problem that we have. And the key is to have that in mind, to develop empathy, put yourself into the shoes of the user, right? So these four tools can be used to develop empathy, right? So that in context observation, let me give you another example that was shared by the IDEO team, right? So once they were asked to kind of redesign the hospital experience, right, so of inpatient, right, and one of them kind of admitted himself as a patient to understand what's happening in the entire process, and he spent an entire day in a ward, admitted into a ward in hospital. And what do you think could have been the most interesting thing that he found out? If someone is in hospital bed, what do they spend time doing in an hospital bed? Most of the time we eat medicines, and if we are awake, they found out most of the time we keep staring at the ceiling.
Ceiling fan, yeah.
Right. So they said, like, let's do something to the ceiling to make that experience a little better for someone who is there, right? And this is literally getting the perspective of the user, right, or the patient. Unless you go there and lie down in the bed and look what's happening and think about what's happening to me, you will not come with that kind of perspective, right? So in context observation is very important. Extreme users, studying analogous slides, and talking to experts. So these are 4 tools that one can do to develop empathy for the user in the exploratory phase. Are there any questions or thoughts on this before we move on to the second phase? Okay, so then we will move ahead, right? So the question is, once you develop empathy or you identified what are the pain points or the challenges for the user from the user point of view, what do you do with it, right? So what's next? And as we saw, the next step is about how do you have to kind of integrate all of the inputs that you have got. And maybe you can use a tool like what is called as an empathy map, right? And map all the things that you have developed on 4 quadrants of what is the customer saying, what is the customer doing, right? These two you know, right, based on your interviews and observation. From this, you want to make inference of how do they actually kind of feel, right? So you want to come with how do they feel and how do they think, so that you can zero in on what is the gain point and the pain point. What are the challenges that they have? What is it that they kind of like in the program? So the entire process you will see, right? This will keep repeating in the entire process. But even in the exploration phase, you're seeing there is a process of divergence, right? Where you go and talk to people, where you go and observe, where you go and talk to experts to get all the knowledge about the particular problem or the challenge. But the next phase is to have a mode of what is called as convergent thinking. You have to take all this mass of information that you have, and then you can find out, or you have to kind of crystallize into what are the key challenges, what are the key pain points that you need to kind of address. So you need to do both. Typically, whenever we solve a problem, we engage in convergent thinking. We immediately jump to the solution. But what this process tells you is that you need to alternate between phases of divergent thinking and then phases of convergent thinking. The first phase, go and talk to people, observe them in action, talk to experts, focus on extreme users, go and look at analogous sites. And then in the next part of the exploratory phase, sit together as a team, find out what are the key things, common things that are emerging, what are the key pain points or what are the key challenges that, if addressed, can create great value for the user or the product, right? So that's what we want to do at the end of the exploration phase. You've identified what are the challenge, what are the problems that you need to address. Okay, so that's the goal of the exploratory phase. And from that, we need to, once we know that, we can move to the next phase, which is the concepting phase. So what do we do with this challenge? How do we kind of solve this problem becomes the next important question, right? If there are no questions on what we have covered so far, Dr. Tyagarajan.
Tell me, sir.
So with your permission, we'll conclude this particular session 4 minutes early.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let me check any question from the morning. They can be interact with you, or they can post the question.
Yeah, they can post it in chat, and then we'll pick it up maybe, right? And then
up to
my request is, let's come back sharp at 11:45, right? Because we have 2 more phases to go, so that our lunch doesn't get delayed. Yes, so we'll all commit ourselves to be back at 11:45 sharp. Is that fine, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can make it 11:45. Okay.
Right. So 11:45, maybe even if 2-3 minutes before that, we can join and we can begin. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll see after the break.
Okay, sir. Okay. Let me have a 15 minutes break. Again, we have to make a second session on 11:45.
Okay.
So the first. Yes, sir. 11:45, sir.
Yeah, we will continue, right? We will not leave.
Yes, sir. Okay, okay, sir. We can just. So anyway, you will get a session link for the feedback, which is already available in the chat box. So everyone are requested to fill the feedback form. So kindly fill the feedback form, please.
Okay. So welcome back. So Dr. Tyagarajan,
Sir, we can start, sir.
can we start? Okay. So our others are also there.
Almost 101, sir, participant.
No, that is what is appearing in participants list. I want to know like whether they are there. So can we just unmute ourselves and wish ourselves a good morning again? Good morning to all of you. Yeah, so you can also raise your hand, like as Balaji is, Dr. Balaji has raised his hand. You can also raise your hand. Good morning. Good morning. So we can unmute for a minute and then say good morning also. Then it will be kind of, we'll know like all of us are here. So it will be nice. So what about others? So should we wait for a couple of more minutes, Dr. Tyagarajan?
Okay, sir. We make it 2 minutes. Let me wait for a minute.
Okay. Good morning once again. So we shall begin now. Dr. Tyagarajan?
We can proceed, sir. You can start, sir.
Okay, we'll proceed. Okay, so let's continue with our journey of understanding what are the different phases of the design thinking process and the principles and the processes. In the first session, we were looked at exploration phase. So the end of the exploration phase, our goal is we would have developed hopefully some empathy for the user. We would have zeroed in what are the important challenges or the pain points that needs to be addressed. Now the next thing is about how are we going to address it. So that's where the second phase comes, which is the concepting phase. In one sense, exploration phase is sometimes also called as an inspiration phase. You have to develop inspiration for what's the problem that you want to solve. And the concepting phase is also sometimes called as the ideation phase. How do we come up with ideas to solve the problems that we have identified? So what I'm going to do here again is to go back to the team of consultants that we saw in the first phase, IDEO, right? After doing all that exploration phase, there is again a small 3 or 4 minute snippet video of how they are engaging in the concepting phase. So just as we watch them in the exploration phase, let's go and watch them in the ideation phase. Again, we might not be able to understand each and every line. That is fine because of the mode of the video is going to be small. There is no subtitles, etc. But I want you to look at what are they doing broadly, right? Like just as we do in the first session, what are they doing broadly to approach this phase? What are some of the principles or the processes that we can pick up from there. Is that fine? So is that fine? Okay. So I think, so you don't, none of you seem to be okay with that. Should I play the video or not? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Balaji. Right, so find the video. Okay. This is a very small video. We just played for 5 minutes. You are able to see the screen?
Yes, sir. Concepting phase.
Yes.
After several weeks of immersive research in the field, the team regrouped at IDEO San Francisco office to begin the concepting phase of the project.
So those are the kinds of...
I want to print that out.
Yeah, can we print that? Because then we can just put that up. There's this real problem with queuing, with these really long lines. And a lot of that has to do with people arriving serendipitously. Like they're there, and then they're like, let's go see a movie. And so can we more or less decentralize that process of deciding what to see and then distribute the line in a larger volume of space? So right now there's just a kind of singular option for doing this journey. And so in the future, could there be a diversity of those options so that the line, if it forms, is small? What is this? What are we talking about in this case? One of the ideas with like this is that there could be like, there's like a bar area, there's like a family area, there's like different zones, so maybe we do something like that.
So the benefit then of eating not in the food court but next to the sala is that you could take the food in. I'm just trying to think of what would the benefit be.
It deals with like the time thing, right? It's like everybody's gonna show up at different times, but we can all meet and like go into the theater. It also gets at this mantra, like you're never idle in line, like there's always an opportunity to be engaged. Yeah, so if I hang out here at Rudy's waiting for you, I can have a Chilcano while I'm waiting for you.
Also,
or
like
a soda.
Being sensitive to time, because food
Depending on
courts
how old
usually
they are.
aren't that far away from the cinema, but you can have 10 to 20 extra minutes, not leaving the cinema to go get food.
There aren't assigned seats in a lot of these, so people want to like get there way ahead of time, but then they just wait, or they take their business elsewhere for an hour.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, are we missing something with having a space outside, like in front of the theater, that's maybe in connection with the mall?
I like Courtney's idea of like the movie queue, like you can show this person kind of keeping track of all the things they want to see and like sharing that with their friends. That'd be that plus. Got it. So it starts with that. Yeah. So the person's looking at this stuff and like, oh, I want to go see blah blah blah. Picks it and then rallies the friends. He could even have a couple films and send like the doodle thing gets much more complex, where it's like what film and what day, but
setting up a poll.
Yeah. That's a nice evolution. Can you capture that? In the room, there's paper, markers, scissors, whiteboard, foam core. We use any and all of that to capture the thinking. Like it's very important to make all ideas portable ideas. That is so that all thinking is liquid and portable. So there might be an idea, like a piece of an idea that's over there, and you realize, we just did this a second ago, we're like, we thought that was important over there, but then after discussing, we're like, that actually is a bigger contributor to the strategy here. And so the key thing is getting it out of your head into a kind of field of possible pattern, and then identifying those patterns. And whatever tool works to do that, you use it.
Maybe
It could
like
be a couple, right? It could be two
You're wandering around
opportunists,
the
and they're just
mall.
like, you know what? Like maybe we just like go to a movie. This is a third one.
The group built on one another's ideas and refined concepts that would attempt to address the problem of customers arriving early at a theater and not knowing what to do with the extra time.
This is essentially an idea that's like, it's a really simple view of like what the next 3 movies coming up are, right? And so it's like how long they are. And it's just a quick view. Say you walked into the theater and you're like, I want to see a movie. And rather than just saying like, oh, you're screwed, like it's 7:30 and it's 5 o'clock now, like come on back.
it kind of gives you like some suggestions of things you might do before that movie. So if it's coming up fairly soon, it's like, get a drink at our bar at the movie theater. But if it's like, say it's an hour and a half away, maybe we give you a coupon to go to a partner restaurant in the mall or something like that, so that you can kind of like construct your time and you're not just like stuck waiting and kind of aimlessly figuring it out, but we're actually helping you like design your time a little bit more.
Concepts sometimes drop like flies. We're like, whoa, that totally would not work, or we learned something in the field that was like, we need to go in a different direction.
This one didn't make it very far. I thought it was going to be a hit. We wanted to find ways to get moviegoers to vote for upcoming movies, partially so that we know like what the demand will be, partially so they feel engaged, and then knowing how they feel, we might be able to kind of negotiate with distributors or do things like that. And so we were thinking of all the different ways you could do that, and one of the ideas was to vote with your trash. So like rather than like, sending a text message to vote or like filling in some iPad thing, it's just like dump your trash in the Muppets trash can if you want to go see that movie. But obviously those two things linking together, like what I want to do in my trash, are not necessarily like super together, so yeah.
A lot of concepts end up getting enveloped into other concepts to create more of an experience or more of a suite of concepts.
We had this back in the day where it's put your receipts in a, like very simply. Yeah. Could it be put your wristband, like did you have a great experience? Yeah. A sucky experience, a so-so. And it's just, you have to leave your wristband anyway. Just leave it in one of the containers.
That's the thing.
Right. Okay. So would anyone like to share briefly, like any observations or interesting things that you noticed in what they were doing? What caught your attention? Anyone? So who is talking, please? So did anyone observe anything interesting in that video? Dr. Balaji, would you like to share like what got your attention? Or even Dr. Saravanan? Yes, Balaji, can you, if you can just unmute and explain in addition to chatting in the box? You need not switch on the video, you can just unmute and explain if it is possible. Yes, we are getting more answers now. Gaurav has talked about, noticed a lot of post-it notes that they have used. Okay, can't unmute, that's fine. Dr. Balaji, thank you. So you're talking about gathering everywhere. Gaurav, would you like to expand on what is it about the post-it notes that interested you? Would it be possible for you to unmute and participate, Gaurav?
So we already given the.
Yes.
Now you can unmute themselves and you can speak.
Yes. Yeah. So Gaurav, Balaji, I think if it is a problem technically, you can unmute yourself and speak. If there are any other issues, that's fine. Right, Gaurav? Dr. Gaurav?
So yes, Professor. Yes, Gaurav has said, most of the places where people have gathered, they have made many number of post-it notes, right, which had very important messages carrying on it. That's what actually we would have see on this video. Actually, arranging. Hello.
Yeah, why do you think they use post-it notes? So are they using post-it notes just for the heck of it? Okay, we are doing a lot of activity. We have to show something. That's why we are doing this post-it notes. Do you think, or post-it notes, do they serve some other purpose in that process?
Yeah, I think I think probably they try to take over the attention of the people over there.
Okay, so one is you get the attention. Right, Gaurav also points about how they were rearranging things. Right, so it's much more easy. One of the statements he made in that process was much of the thinking is liquid. Right, he says there is no set fixed way of thinking. Multiple people, a group of diverse people with different perspectives who have engaged in a project are coming and giving these ideas, and they're putting it in post-it notes. And because it is post-it note, it is easy for them to reorganize. Right, so you're not stuck to one form of thinking, right? So in the concept, right? Yes, Gaurav, you want to add to it?
They got a freeness of arranging and rearranging their ideas again and again, so that they can again ideate, come to a conclusion. If there is something a problem, they can again re-ideate for the same.
Yes, right. So they were free. They were kind of did not have this thing of, okay, this is an idea, we will stick to it and we will not discuss other ideas. This is an idea, but he also gave that example, right, of vote your trash, right? Where he said, I got this idea of people can come and put their whatever popcorn or Pepsi cups in the trash bins or the dustbins, which will have posters of forthcoming movies, right? And whichever movie you like, and you put in that. He had that idea. But later they dropped that idea because they thought like, how can we make it as a trash, right? Because you're giving it as a vote of something I like, so dustbin doesn't work. And so the next lady said, okay, let's convert into an idea of a wristband, right? Let's give a wristband to everyone, and they can now come and drop that wristband in the poster where of the forthcoming movie, so that you know like what movies might be more attractive in the next phase, or to also give an engaging thing. So they were okay to drop ideas, they were okay to kind of build on the other ideas as well. Dr. Sarana Kumar, you're unmuted yourself. You want to talk, you want to add to this discussion, sir?
Chidi, come.
Hello. Okay. So let's kind of continue, right, and then see what's the objective of Okay. So what is the objective of this phase? If the first phase is about developing empathy for the user and getting inspiration, the idea here is how do we take that challenge or the pain point, and how can we design new solutions for the challenges that we have identified in the first phase. And one of the key process that IDEO team uses as part of the design thinking is what is called as brainstorming, right? Which is like a group of people come together, there is a free flow exchange of ideas of solving it, right? All of us would have engaged in brainstorming in one form or the other, but IDEO follows certain rules or guidelines when they do brainstorming. Let us look at some of the rules that they follow or guidelines that they followed for effective brainstorming and coming up with ideas, right? The first rule that they have is that they say defer judgment, right? So do not immediately say whether whether an idea is good or bad, right? They say like defer the judgment. You have to, at some point in time, you have to say whether an idea is good or bad, but not now. You have to hold it back for some time, and when that stage comes, you say that. Why do you think they have this rule? What is it? What is the utility of having this rule in this brainstorming process? Would anyone like to say like what could be the idea behind this rule? Yes, Dr.
Sir, yes, sir. So if someone directly come to a judgment, it is unfair for the other members of the committee, those who are there in the brainstorming session, so that they could not put up their ideas and they could not come up with their word. So in that case, one should always propose an idea and should not come with a judgment at once. So after coming with all the discussing with all and coming to a conclusion, then a conclusion could be made, but not a judgment.
Okay, great. Wonderful point, right? So because if somebody is going to judge immediately, it is going to signal to others that their idea might also be judged, right? So they might not share, right? And you will not get good ideas. The idea here is to generate as many ideas as possible, because the more number of ideas that you develop, the better ideas that you can get, right? So one is quality, but other is also important quantity. Quantity will ultimately lead to quality as well. And if you judge, maybe that person himself will not be able to give the better idea next time. So that's the rule that they have. So because if you start judging ideas, right? So what might happen is, say, for example, this red line that I have here is where people censor their ideas, or they themselves keep their ideas with themselves. And what might happen is you might have only what people think as good ideas might be shared. So the average quality may be higher, but you will not get fatter tails in this distribution. In the sense, you will not get crazy ideas. So you will lose out on some really good ideas, which might at immediate thinking might appear not feasible, but it might be the actual good idea. Yes, you will lose out on really crazy ideas also, but you will also lose on greater, very good ideas. The goal here is to get as many ideas as possible so that you can get the best ideas. So that's why the second rule that IDEO uses is encourage wild ideas. Let it be as crazy as possible. Let it even be bad, right? So we should not even kind of at this point in time dismiss what could be bad ideas for two reasons: because it might signal others and they might hold back a good idea. Second, what might be a bad idea at this point in time could be iterated into a good idea by someone else, right? So that example of voting the preference of the movie with the trash, you saw how the idea was bad, right? But someone kind of built on it and then said, let's convert into a wrist band to use that. Somebody can make it better, right? And somebody can iterate on your idea. So 2 or 3 ideas can be combined to make it a good idea, right? When I go to the prototyping, I will actually show how they implemented that idea, right, in a completely different manner. But the same idea, which was dismissed off as bad, was improved upon and done better. So the second important thing is encourage wild ideas, because you want to create psychological safety for people to work on it. Related to it, as I said, the third rule or the guideline that they use is building on the ideas of others, right? You want to build on ideas on others so that you can get into a better idea. The fourth rule that they follow is stay focused on the topic, right? You have a challenge, you speak about that. Brainstorming doesn't mean you can talk about anything that you want, right? You want to stay on the topic, but feel free to talk about it. The fifth rule that they have is one conversation at a time, right? So this is something I really like as a teacher. I tell my students also that any point in time in a class, only one person should speak, either the student or any of the participants, so that because it is sending a respect, right? A sign of respect to others, a courtesy to others, so that every voice is kind of heard. So it should be like an NDTV newsroom, right? It cannot be like a Republic TV newsroom where everybody speaks, right? And then there is only chaos, you don't understand anything that is happening. So the other rule that they have is one conversation at a time. The sixth rule that they have, another thing that you would have noticed along with post-its, is that they are also drawing a lot of things, right? And there are, why do you think they are drawing? Why do you think they have this rule of making it visual? Why do you think they are drawing a lot of things? Even in the interview, they were taking drawing, and even here they were drawing. Why do you think they were doing? Is it because these guys want to show so we want to draw? Is it because of that, or do you think this rule also has certain utility?
It's because
a picture worth.
Sorry, so you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. A picture worth 1,000 words, sir. So if someone when comes with a visual impact, gives a lot more impact and could give you a clear understanding of the situation. So that's why visuals are always better than words.
Yes, right. So Gurpreet, you want to add to what Gaurav is saying?
Sir, I feel it's more to do because most of us are visual learners, and the brain processes visual information much faster than textual information. Yes. And that is why it is encouraged to put down the ideas in a visual format so that it's easier for us to consume it as humans.
Okay, thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Dr. Gurpreet. Paranagran has also posted here talking about mind mapping. Again, we do that mind mapping exercise because that's how our brain kind of intuitively processes information, right? As Gaurav said, it's about communication also, right? I have an idea. I'm working in a team. How do I communicate, right? So one, I can do it in words, but if I do it visually, I will be able to explain it much better. Then others can understand and then they can build on it, right? So it is also a communication tool. It is not to say that your drawing has to be perfect, right? You need to be great artist in drawing. You are using it, it can be bad, right? As long as it is kind of communicating. The idea that they're saying is move away from just using words to use the drawings or making it visual. because the medium that we use for communication or ideation process will also determine the quality of the ideation process. And that's where the post-it stickers become very important, right? Once you write it as a post-it, it automatically sends a signal to people that it means I can move this post-it around, I can throw this post-it, I can reclassify this post-it, etc. This is different from your writing on a board with a pen, right? And then it is very difficult to move. It is very difficult to erase. People will not be open to kind of do it as well, right? Once you put post-it, they will be able to do it. So the media that we use also becomes very important, and that's why they are saying let's make it visual, right? It can be as simple as say a line diagram or whatever, right? So the last rule that they have, which we have already discussed before, is to go for quantity, right? More number of ideas over a period of time, you might end up in a better idea. And so there is a saying in IDEO, they say we value strong ideas but loosely held, right? Because you don't want to get committed to one idea, and you want to have passion or you want to back your idea, but it is, you don't get ticketed and wedded to that idea, so that it becomes very difficult to kind of move away from it. So that is not kind of idea, right? So these are some of the rules that they use in brainstorming. I'm going to take this time to play a 3-minute video of Tom Kelly again, talking about the ideation or the brainstorming part. And then we'll come and say, talk about like, what do we do after doing this exercise? At some point in time, you also need some other tools to further this. What can we do, right? I'll just take a couple of minutes, a short 3-minute video. I'll play this in YouTube with subtitles so that it might be easier to follow even if the audio is not great. Okay, so let us look at what we are doing, right? So. Are you able to see the screen? Yes? Sir, are you able to see the screen?
Sir, it's blank right
Yeah,
now.
No, sir. No, sir.
No, but in the sense that it is not a PowerPoint screen, right? So yeah.
Yeah. The video, I think it's on a video.
Important thing for everyone to keep in mind about ideation in general, and maybe brainstorming in particular, is these are sacrificial ideas. We're hoping to get 100 ideas in an hour-long brainstormer, and no one should imagine or pretend that more than half a dozen of them are going to survive the process, right? We're not coming up with 100 ideas because we need 100 ideas. We're coming up with 100 ideas because we need 1 or 2. You know, there was that old Linus Pauling quote where if you want a good idea, start with a lot of ideas. And so a good brainstorming session generates a lot of ideas, and no one should get attached to any one of them because there's a social contract in the room that says, you know, we're going to throw most of these away, and we are. And so often the way we will do it is a subset of the brainstorming group will stay behind and say, okay, what do we really have here? And in recent years, we've gone from brainstorming, from writing on the whiteboard, they're on individual Post-it notes, and the reason for doing that is it facilitates the grouping process. So we kind of squint a little bit and say, well, what do we have here? Oh, so there's these ideas about adherence or compliance, and then there's these ideas about what happens before and after the product use, and then there's these ideas about the authorities in the room that might assign this. Prescribe this drug or diagnose this. And so now we've got them grouped, and then we go back through, and sometimes it's as simple as voting. We give everybody 5 colored dots, and we say, okay, place your dots. And then when you've got enough people in the room that vote, then you say, oh, look here, we've got a couple of good ideas about adherence, and then we've got this one good idea about before and after, and then nothing over here. Let's concentrate over here. And so you haven't chosen, you haven't really decided anything, but you've kind of narrowed down. It's like, okay, since we have finite energy and finite time, let's in the next round of brainstorming or in the super quick prototyping that we're going to do next, let's focus a little bit of our time and attention here, because this seems like it's going to be a fruitful endeavor for us.
Right. So as he said, the next thing is after you do one of the thing is that it is sacrificial ideas. You should not get vetted. At some point in time, you based on the time that you have, you can engage in wide brain of divergent brainstorming, and then you need to focus on a couple of ideas which look promising based on your judgment of the team or based on economic feasibility. Other things you want to focus on some ideas and zero in on certain specific ideas. So Dr. Karunakaran had posted this thing of how sometimes ideas can also be accidental, right? And maybe they are bad, right? In fact, we are talking about Post-it. Some of you might know the story of Post-it itself. It is an accidental innovation. The scientists were working on developing a very strong adhesive, right? In that experiment, they failed. The adhesive that they found was very weak than what they wanted, right? So it did not meet the expectation of what they wanted. But because they developed this weak adhesive, somebody gave the idea of let us take this weak adhesive and make it as a Post-it, right? And that's so that it can be moved from one to the other, right? So sometimes it can come from accidental also, right? But as part of the brainstorming process, as part of this process of coming with ideas, right? To kind of, if I have to build on what Dr. Karunakaran has said here, we cannot wait for accidents forever, isn't it? Isn't it, Dr. Karunakaran? Accidents happen, they are helpful, but you cannot wait for accidents every time to get creative or good. Do you agree, sir?
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir. Definitely.
So, what can you think of? What else can we do to come with good ideas? Is there any other way apart from accidents to come with new ideas? Where do good ideas come from?
We can fantasize some of the things, sir, so that the creativity will be enlarged, and we can segregate based on the fantasy, sir.
Okay, right. So the thing is, yeah, how do we develop that imagination or fantasy that you talk about, right? So where do we get these creative ahas from, right? So can we improve the odds of getting this creative insights, right? So we all know this famous story of Archimedes getting this idea about density and volume when he was having a bath, and then he jumped up Eureka, right? So I'm going to share two techniques that scientists who have studied creativity have identified, which can improve the odds of success of coming up with creative ideas, which we can blend it as part of our brainstorming process. The first source of creativity, what they call is called as combination, right? Let me give you a couple of examples and let you know, right? I've given two pictures here, right? One is McDonald's, right? The other is someone performing the eye surgery, right? So can someone make the linkage between these two? Why have I put these two pictures together? I have an organization in mind which connects to both of these pictures. Can someone kind of identify like what is this organization? Dr. Karunakaran, I'll give you a clue also. Like the organization that I'm putting here as a name, which has a very strong linkage to the city that you are based in, Tiruchirappalli. The name of the organization has very strong linkage to Pondicherry. Can you identify this organization connecting McDonald's and eye surgery?
Difficult, sir. I can't able to remember.
Or you forget McDonald's, sir. Name an organization, name of the organization which is related to eye surgeries and eye hospitals, which has a very strong linkage to Pondicherry.
Aravind Hospital. Aravind Eye Hospital.
Aravind Eye Hospital, right? So Aravind Eye Hospital was named after Sri Aurobindo because Dr. Venkatappa Govindaswamy, who founded Aravind Eye Care, was a follower of Aravind, right? And that's why they named that eye care hospital as Aravind. It's headquartered in Madurai, and it is now there in many places in India. And many of us might have heard about it. Almost half of the surgeries that they do are free or at half the cost, is subsidized cost, but still they are profitable, right? At very mass scale. So how did they come up with such an hospital system, right? That's because Dr. Venkatappa Govindaswamy, Dr. V, who founded it, asked himself the question, right? If McDonald's can make hamburgers at high volume, at high quality, at the same quality in different places at lower cost, why can't we also McDonaldize eye surgeries or cataract surgeries? This is exactly the question he asked. In fact, he has written a letter also to an ophthalmologic journal, writing to different doctors asking this very question. Like, why can't we make cataract surgeries like making hamburgers? Then he went and studied McDonald's. Then he found the reason why McDonald's is able to give us same quality or same taste hamburger or sandwich everywhere at different quarters and at a faster time and lower cost is because they have standardized their operations. They've taken their entire operation, break it out into different phases. Each of them were standardized, trained, SOPs were formed. So he took that idea and then he looked at cataract surgery, right? And they broke the entire cataract surgery process into distinct phases. They standardized everything. Some of the things that doctors were doing were now done by nurses who are trained for that, thereby increasing volume, thereby reducing waste, thereby decreasing cost, thereby giving them the ability to serve 50% of them free of charge, right? So the idea from McDonald's was taken and used in Aravind Eye Care, right? Let me give you another example, another company that we engage in day in and day out called Google. So where does the idea for Google come from, right? So Google founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and there's one more person who's Rajesh Motwani, who was the PhD advisor, right? So these guys were working on the PhD topic of data mining, dealing with large quantity of data, right? And they got that idea of looking at large quantity of data of internet because of their knowledge in data mining, right? And you know, like, why Google is the best search engine? Because of their algorithm. Anyone know, like, what is the speciality of the algorithm? Why do you always get the best results in Google when compared to, say, Bing or other places? That's because they have this algorithm called page rank, right? What they did was, they said, we will go and list all the websites that are there in the internet, but we have to rank them. How do we rank them? So that idea they picked from their knowledge of academics. We all know, right? So our standing of academics is determined by how many other people are citing our papers, right? If many people cite our papers, if our citation index is high, then we are a better academic ranked as a better academic than others. They took that idea and they said, how many other websites have hyperlinked to this particular page? If there are many websites that are linking to this page, then we will rank it higher. And that's what the proprietary page rank algorithm comes from. So that idea they took from their knowledge of citations because they were PhD students, right? They did not invent search. Search was already there. There was a search engine called Alta Vista. So they took that search engine idea, which was already there. They combined their idea of data mining and the idea of citation ranking to create a page rank algorithm to create a search engine. But what really made Google profitable was they started giving ads on the side of the results. That idea again was not their own. That idea came from another search engine at that point in time called Overkill. So what you find here is that Google was an innovative idea, innovative business model, but all the pieces were already there. What they did was to combine the existing pieces in a new way. That's what Columbia Business School Professor William Duggins talks about. Where do we get creative flashes of insight? Right? Whenever we think of a problem, one particular insight or a flash comes. At that point in time, we get this idea, right? But what happens in that instant? What happens in that instant is our brain recombines already existing things or knowledge in some new manner to create a new idea. So combination thinking is one way to come with new ideas, right? So let me tell you, let me ask you an example. We all know Oyo rooms. What do you think Oyo room business is a combination of? It is again a combination of already existing things. Can you just identify like, which are the elements which are a combination of this?
Travel and stay places.
Travel and stay places, yes, right. What is Oyo room telling us? Oyo room tells us we get the lowest cost room, and whichever Oyo room we go, whether it is Chennai or it is Bombay or whether it is Baroda or Lucknow or anywhere, right? you'll get bare minimum same level of service, right? So that's what OYO rule tells us. So you see, this is a combination of an idea of budget hotels like Ginger. Like Ginger Hotel says, okay, whichever Ginger you go, whether it is Chennai, whether it is Bombay or Hyderabad, you get the same experience. You take that idea of standardized experience from Ginger budget hotel chain, and the other idea of listing the hotels. At that point in time, there was a company called Stayzilla, which doesn't operate now, or Make My Trip. They combine this idea, they come with a new idea. You can think about any problem, you'll inevitably find it is nothing but a combination of whole things, right? So the first idea to increase our chances of coming up with creative ideas rather than just depending on accidents is to think in terms of combination. Take the problem, break it into multiple pieces of the problem, identify how each piece is being solved in some other context, and then see, can I create a new combination of these pieces, come with a new idea. So the first tool or technique that we can use to improve our odds of coming up with creative idea is what is called as combination. The second tool, sometimes that, again, this is just tool, right? It cannot guarantee that you'll come with the insight. But the point is, if you can start thinking in terms of combination way of thinking, your odds of coming up with a newer idea or an innovative idea.
If you have not understood, if you're facing difficulty, unmute yourself and inform, okay? No, don't sit idle, okay?
Okay, right. So the second way to think about, the second mode of thinking that can come with creativity, people have again found, is to think in terms of contrast. Right? Let me explain to you what do you mean by contrast, right? So for example, Apple iTunes, when it came, right, it became very successful because it allowed users to buy one specific song in an album, right, instead of buying the entire album, right, and pay only $1 or 90 cents and buy one song. So previously, all the music companies thought we should bundle the songs. Right? We should combine everything into a single album. We can sell only as a full album. We cannot sell individual songs. So Steve Jobs thought in terms of contrast. He turned the conventional wisdom on its head and asked, what will the world look like if I start selling songs as singles? In fact, the idea itself was not his, right? So idea was, by that time already piracy and Napster had unbundled the songs. He just kind of legitimized it. But this is one way of thinking in terms of contrast. You identify what are the assumptions that are underlying conventional thinking in that particular problem area of your product. Even as an engineer, you can think as a product, like what is a conventional assumption, and just force yourself to think what will happen if I think of it as the opposite, and maybe that forcing might sometimes lead you to new idea. Some scientist or some engineer at some point in time thought, why should exhaust gas always be seen as waste? And can I see it as something that can be useful? It is that idea that would have led to exhaust gas turbocharger, right? The second mode of thinking that can trigger creative thinking is thinking in terms of contrast. So thinking in terms of combination is one technique. Thinking in terms of contrast is another technique. Can someone share any other examples of these two things? Thinking in terms of contrast or thinking in terms of combination. Would you like to share an example?
So if I may, I can share one strategy that I have developed for my students, low achievers. So always, when we do revisions in classrooms, we revise the entire course. But I said, why do we have to revise the entire course? Why can't we analyze what are the weak areas and then go, prepare a checklist and then focus only on those checklist areas. And that really helped students to identify their weak areas, which they were not understanding before that, and also then breaking the larger topic into smaller and then focusing on one topic at one time, which improved the results. So that's my personal experience.
What was done always, that you question that assumption and then ask, like, why can't it be done the other way? And if there is merit, it is not that every time you need to do that, but in this particular case, you saw merit in doing that, right? And you got that thing because you were able to question, why should it be done this way? Why can't it be done the opposite way, right? So that's one good example of thinking in contrast. right? It's not that always at the end of every creative process it is not that we have to come with a world-breaking idea. It can be a very small idea, but it can make a really big difference to the user, right? So that's what we want to kind of do. Anyone else want to kind of share before we move on? Okay, so the idea here again, as we saw in the exploration phase, is to move from divergent thinking to convergent thinking. The first phase, you want to do brainstorming, you want to keep it open, you want to make your ideas liquid, you want to get as many ideas as possible, wild ideas as possible, divergent. But at some point in time, from the ideas, then you need to converge on, pick what are the most promising ideas, right? What could be the ideas? In this process of brainstorming and choosing ideas, you can think of thinking in terms of combination, which is in terms of looking at other places and combining it with a new way and coming up with a new model or a new solution, or force yourself to think, question the existing status quo assumptions and see whether it makes sense, right? These are ways of thinking to trigger your creativity, right? It will not guarantee that you will come with a thing, but it's just that it's a way of thinking that might lead to better odds of coming with a new idea. So that is the idea of the concepting phase, or sometimes it is also called as the ideation phase. So these are some of the ideas that they got based on the theater experience, right? So they came with some ideas, right? So they came with this idea of, can we do something to take the experience home, right? So can we give a merchandise when this people who go to cinema going back, Cine Planet viewers, can we give them something that they can carry with them back to their home, etc. So these are some outputs of their concepting phase, right? So we saw two phases. Exploration phase is about inspiration, developing empathy for the user. The second phase is about the concepting phase. You take a challenge and how do we solve that particular problem or that particular challenge to come with an idea, right? Or ideation phase, right? Any questions or thoughts on the concepting phase before we move to the final phase of the design thinking process, which is the prototyping phase? Is the ideas clear? What we discussed is the concepts clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So now we are getting some response in the post chat also. So that's good. Okay. So let's now move to the second, the last phase or the last stage of the design. I should not say it is the last phase because the process is iterative process and continues, right? But the next important phase, which is called as the prototyping phase. Now that you have an idea, right, about a particular thing, what are we going to do next, right? So what is it that we want to do? Again, we will follow the same consultancy video, right? So we will ask, we will see what they are doing, right, in the prototyping phase. And then we, again, as we did in the past two things, let us come back and understand what they are doing. What are some of the processes or principles we can pick up? Again, here, you might not be able to follow. It is not important to follow each and every line. Broadly, you see what is happening, why it is happening, how it can help in the prototyping phase, etc. Is that fine? Is that fine? Yes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So, Dr. Tyagarajan, this video is for a couple, about 4 minutes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
I'm going to just step out for a couple of minutes. I'll come back before the video ends. I'll start playing the video, right? I'll just be back in 2 minutes. That's all. Okay, so let's go and look at what these people are doing in the prototyping phase. So let us.
Approximately 4 weeks later, the team was back on the ground in Lima and eager to begin the prototyping phase.
Okay, you're able to see the video?
Yes, sir. You can play now.
Sir. Yes.
4 weeks later, the team was back on the ground in Lima and eager to begin the prototyping phase. Preparation of the cinema space began very early in the morning. The team worked together to have everything in place before the doors opened and the first customers arrived.
I'm really excited. I like getting tangible and seeing things happen, and we've done a lot of sketching about this and talking about it, but to see it coming alive, I mean, furniture is in place now, but I can't wait for people to show up. We just did staff training for about an hour where we were telling different Cineplanet staff about the prototypes we're running, and you could see this little glint in their eyes that, okay, something different is happening in our theater, there's new furniture that I'm not used to, I'm maybe playing a different role, and so that's already successful because they're thinking about how their theater could be different.
Several prototype experiments were rolled out, including a decision ticketing area, an improved display for movie showtimes, a place where customers could vote for movies they'd like to see, an activity area, a lounge featuring a self-serve popcorn refill station that Cineplanet employees fashioned out of an old ice machine, and a place offering take-home items.
We're kind of testing this idea of take-home popcorn, so like microwave popcorn in like a tin to like eat it out of. It could be sold here, it could be sold in the grocery store, and like we think it's a good idea that they could do easily, but it's more a way to test like, are people willing to bring Cineplanet home with them?
We set out benches for the Explore Zone, but people have adopted those seats for waiting for in the ticket line. So maybe a whole family will show up in line, but then they'll send the kids or maybe the mom to sit on the couches and wait. So the line looks shorter and people are waiting by sitting in a comfortable seat. So the perceived wait time might be a little bit less. We have yet to ask people about that, but what we have heard is that people like sitting down and being comfortable. Yeah, we're prototyping really fast. I mean, they're literally printing new signs upstairs about like, here's the fast pay line, here's the fast pickup line. So they're helping us prototype right now.
One of the first people to use the guide, they looked through all the movies and they're like, I don't really want to see any of those. I don't know exactly what, but they just walked out. It's like, oh. So when we originally were going to wear something to identify us is because the taquilla, this particular spot, was here. And for us to freely move around the space, we needed to look official to the other staff. But now we actually look official to the customers, but we can't actually engage with them. So it looks weird where someone just asked us something and then we called over Mildred who's not in a uniform. So we're going to go back to sweet clothes.
The voting has been really interesting. People are very earnest and like are really excited to give their opinion. This one woman was like, I really think that they're going to show the film that I voted on, and that's why she voted.
There are benches next to voting booths, next to the movie posters, and you'll see people carrying their huge bundles and their compos and looking over and seeing there's an activity, putting their stuff down. So people are pausing in what used to be a thoroughfare. So we're really excited by that because people clearly want to share their opinions. They clearly want to have a say about what's played here. So I guess I didn't anticipate people wanting to stop and experience it so much.
After a very long but successful day, the IDEO and Cineplanet project teams gathered to share their observations, document what they had thought worked or didn't work, and to celebrate a job well done.
Sentados, esperándome, comiendo mi canchita. Lo único que me falta es la televisión y estoy como si estuviera en mi casa en mi mueble.
We learned a ton today, and we don't want to lose that information. So some of you have filled out these forms already, but he had a great example. He filled out his in much detail. Everything that he learned, he wrote it down. Ideas that he had, he wrote it down. Things he would do differently next time, he wrote it down. It's important to do that now. Some stuff worked not so great, the selling of the candy, the violent person in the front. But a lot of other stuff was really great. I mean, the Spider-Man poster, people got photos to take home. A little kid spilled his popcorn and was immediately directed to the refill station. Some people came to the movies without knowing what they wanted to see and were a little stressed out, but then they met Alvaro. And I think probably the coolest thing, and other people chime in, is that I noticed a bunch of us changing things in the middle of prototyping. It showed that all of us were really dedicated to learning and to experimenting and to trying new things. And that is really cool.
So would anyone like to kind of share, like you saw the same team doing something in exploration phase, a small snippet of the concepting phase, a small snippet of what they are doing in the prototyping phase. What is it that they are trying to do? What caught your attention? What do you think could be some of the learnings or interesting things that we noticed? Anyone, please.
So one thing which I found very, very important is every idea is valuable. And even while they are prototyping, they're allowing people to experiment. So it's not that, you're fixed. So having a fixed mindset is what is the problem. We have to have a growth mindset is what I take back from this example. Thank you.
So good, very interesting observation of they are still kind of trying out something new, even though we said we have divided it into concepting phase, ideation, we are supposed to have done, finished, but still they are coming up with new ideas, changing things to see how it works, etc. Right? What else do you think they were trying to do here? And what other interesting things that you noticed? Did you see that idea of voting on favorite movies? That idea that we discussed in that vote with the trash, and then somebody said it's a bad idea, and then in the concepting phase they talked about wristband. That idea was in action here. Did you notice it? People were putting that red color dot stickers or green color dot stickers. Right, the kid was coming and keeping those stickers to vote like which was there. Right, so that they were trying to kind of do. What else do you think? What do you think is the objective of this phase? If exploration phase is coming up with insight or inspiration and identify empathy, concepting phase is to come with ideas. What do you think is the objective of this prototyping phase? And what are they doing here?
Learn what is right.
Okay, learn what is
unlearn what is wrong, and then relearn and probably redesign certain things.
Okay, anyone else would like to add? Okay, many of us are engineers here, right? And we would have used we would know very well about prototyping, right? In fact, as I said, the design thinking process came from the world of design or engineering only.
Hello, sir. Sir, Dr. Manikandan, sir.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I got disconnected and connected back. I think there was a...
Okay. Now we are getting, sir. No problem. No issue.
Yeah. So I was asking, like, what is a prototype according to you, and why do we use a prototype? Okay, somebody is chatting. Let me see the chat box. Early stage of a product, yes, definitely. Early stage of a product. So what is the use of a prototype? Why do we use a prototype, Gaurav? What do you think? Pilot testing, right? Okay. Zinkana, can you explain what is your notion of pilot testing mean?
We expect perfection.
You expect perfection. So can you expand on that, sir? Then I'll come to you. Let's just listen to, is it Dr. Singara Vadive?
Sometimes actually the product may not be perfect. To
Okay.
achieve perfection, so we have to test and refine.
Okay, test and refine, right? Those are the key words that I will pick rather than perfection. We'll come and understand why those two words are very important. Test and refine, right? So yes, thank you, sir. Very good. Test, refine, check the readiness level of the product. Zankana, can you expand on what is your notion of pilot testing when you wrote pilot testing on the chat box?
When we are going with experimenting with our process or a product for the first time, we would try to test it with few people, like few sampled people, and we try to find out or we try to interpret their reactions about our process or a product.
Okay, so you want to get the interaction of the response, or as Singaravadi will said about testing and refining. Gaurav is talking about the minimum viable product, right? So use a very the word that is used in on startups and entrepreneurship is about minimum viable product, right? So whether our imagination or idea is working, right? So that's the thing, right? So thank you for all the inputs, right? I think we have all the pieces. So let me just kind of go and expand on them and clarify a couple of nuances that I think could be very useful, right? So the objective here is to understand whatever ideas that we have tested are generated in the ideation phase, will it work and will it really solve the challenge that we identified in the exploration phase? So it is about testing. But I want to make a small distinction, right? It's the way we approach things or the way we define what is a prototype and what is a pilot. See, generally, when we talk about a pilot or pilot and testing on a few customers, it is like you're launching the product, but on a very small scale. You want to see the reaction and then you want to kind of build. That is very important. But what prototyping means in the design thinking process, what I think is it's even before the pilot stage, right? Your product is still not complete, right? You just have the idea in the form of words or figures. You want to convert that idea, which was in words and figures, into some rough, tangible products, right? Tangible prototype. So there's going to be many different levels of prototype. At some point in time, it will be very crude. The idea is to make that idea tangible so that others can see the idea, others can interact with it, and they can give feedback, right? So that's what was happening in that theater also. We saw that that feedback, right, of which movie that you would like. So they had the simple sticker of keeping red or blue, right, red or green. But they want, why are they doing it? They want to see, okay, we had this idea. Let's find out whether actually customers or people who come to cinemas will spend time engaging with it and whether they like it. So they had a rough sticker idea, right? If they find that it works, then it will not be in the form of sticker. They might even make it as a voting, or they might have a digital format, etc. And that can be kind of piloted. But at this stage, it is still a kind of a small prototype, right? Which is a rough, tangible version of the idea, which is used as a communication tool because you want to communicate to the user what you think in mind, and you want to see how users interact with it. Sometimes they might interact with it in the way that you expected. Sometimes they might interact with the way that you did not expect, right? So these guys put those cushions so that people can sit, and suddenly they found that all the children have taken those cushions and started playing with it, right? So people might even come with better ways. You want to get feedback from the user so that you can develop and do it. So if the product is already perfect, right, people will not give ideas, and it will become very difficult for you to even work on that. But the idea is to continuously test and refine, right? Which means you want to have a rough, tangible version of the prototype and test it, right? So that's the idea of prototype. So I'm going to play two quick short videos, right? Again by Tom Kelly, where he gives an example of what he means by a prototype in the design thinking process and how there can be successive stages of prototyping. How simple and how costless can the prototyping be, right? So that's the idea that I want to drive here. So two quick small videos on the idea of prototyping, right? So think about all the things and view these videos with that in your mind, and then we come and kind of share what we have observed in that video, right? So let me just see whether I can get that thing. 1 minute. Okay, so I think I've got the first video. So let me share again. I'm going to share it with YouTube so that you will be able to watch it with subtitles. So I think you can see the YouTube screen now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
When you have medtech products, it is harder to prototype in one sense, that you can't build the whole thing, right? Because that would be takes too long and too cost effective. But I think some people get the notion that you do have to prototype the whole thing, and you do once, towards the end you do, or because you have to like get approvals and actually prove effectiveness. But I think the thing that I think sometimes people miss is you only have to prototype the unbelievable part, right? If I said I have this new device that looks like a table but it levitates people, well, I would prototype, right? So I think when we look at medtech products, a lot of times there's stuff that's totally believable that you can do because it exists in the world, right? And so in some ways, if you can be wildly creative about your prototyping and just prototype the most unbelievable part. I wish I could say that a different way. But it's the part that you would have to believe that works in order to believe that the whole thing works. Rather than the whole thing, we get wound up in building the whole device. I think the kind of discussion about prototyping, we start to think of prototyping as something that you're going to build to show the boss or show investors or something. And while that's nice, the kind of prototyping that I'm really interested in is the kind of prototyping where you're prototyping to answer a question yourself. You're the development team, you're the engineer, or you're the technologist on the product, and you want to prototype something because you don't know the answer. So prototyping the part where you're asking a question, you have happens to me.
Right, sometimes you do have to prototype to show the boss, but that prototyping for yourself, we call that build to think. That you're expressing things with your hands. In history, the human brain and the human hands co-evolved. As you do this tactile expression in terms of a physical prototype, you learn in the process. And so we do lots of medtech devices, and prototyping is an intrinsic part of the process. We worked several years ago now on a tool for sinus surgery. They go up through your nose and they, drill near your brain. You never want your surgeon to say, oops, like when he's up there doing that. Anyhow, we're working on this very precise medical device. But early on, we were thinking about the structure of the device, how to make the material flow through the tube better and never get stuck and things like that. And we were doing this brainstorm in our Chicago office. And one of our engineers, who wasn't quite satisfied with the discussion at hand, leaves the brainstorming session for 5 minutes, makes the ugliest prototype in the history of IDEO. It was like a whiteboard marker with some scotch tape around it and a little clothespin thing. And he brings it back in and hands it to the person he was sitting next to in the brainstorming session. He says, hey, are you thinking of something like this? And so it was the rough architecture of the product. Said, are you thinking of something like this? And nobody laughed. It was an ugly, ugly prototyping. Nobody laughed, but this medical advisor picked up the device and held it very gingerly, because it's a very fragile prototype, and said, yeah, something a little bit like this. And so we made 30 more prototypes before that surgical tool made it to market. But that ugly 5-minute prototype, cost of goods 0, right? That prototype crystallized our thinking and allowed the whole group to move forward to the next step.
Okay. You there? Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir. Okay. Hello, sir.
Okay, hello. So
Okay, now it's okay, sir. Fine.
okay, sorry, I don't know like whether it is from my side or someone. Okay, so but I hope the video got played fully for all of you. Sir, you have to give me connect host rights to share the screen. So Dr. Tyagarajan, yeah. So Dr. Tyagarajan, others are able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We are able
We are
to.
able to hear, sir.
So Dr. Tyagarajan, I need.
Sir, we make you as a co-host. Now you can share, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sorry for that. Right, I think there is some kind of trouble here with the network today. That this was done, right? So I think that particular video kind of explains what prototyping in spirit means in design thinking, right? It's not just one prototype. Anyway, we have to reach to the pilot stage, but we are going to do it in successive stages. And as he said, prototype is also a communication tool, right? You have not stopped the ideation yet. It is still part of ideation. It is still part of communication. But now you're using the prototype to talk with your team. You're also using the prototype to interact with the user to understand what the user's reaction could be, so that you can refine that idea and come with a better idea. Any thoughts or any thoughts that you want to share about that particular video?
Sir.
Yes, Gaurav.
So here, what I got from the video is prototype is something which should actually carry the USP of your product.
Yeah.
The innovation part maximum. What makes your product different from others?
Yeah.
That is the most important thing.
That is important, right? So as I said, prototype need not be one, right? It is about you can pick one part of the idea and try to kind of roughly kind of prototype, because coming up with a prototype itself is something that you need to do creatively, right? You saw that prototype of how it will look like, right? So done with the marker and clip, etc. So it is not necessarily only the USP. At some point in time, you might have to prototype the entire thing. But prototype is basically first you want to talk about something that is new that you want to communicate, right? And that's why he talked about this table which can move up, right? Then he's saying the table I understand. If I say table, everyone will understand. But moving up, how it moves up, people might not understand what I mean by that. So I need to show that. But finally, you might have to develop a prototype which will have everything.
Okay, right? Okay, sir.
And that's why it is also, that's why I said it is a stage before even the pilot. Because the pilot thing gives us a feeling as if the idea is already over, right? That it is frozen, right? People might not give inputs based on that. But prototyping, you're still in a phase of still refining the idea, making your idea better, so it becomes a communication tool. So the idea here is, as it is done in most startups, which is true for most good engineering projects also, you want to check your ideas faster, quicker, cheaper, right? And make changes at a very costless, very stage where it is much less costly to do. So fail fast, fail early, fail often, fail cheaper. That's why they want such a cheap kind of prototype, right? So you want to have a prototype that is not too overdeveloped, right? You don't want a complete prototype, finally wait and then check to know that something doesn't work, right? You want to know it at an early stage. So it can't be too expensive. It can't be something that lacks flexibility, because you can't then refine it. At the same time, the prototype should also not be very so crude that people will dismiss it, You want people to interact with it, but they have to get a grasp of what the idea is, and so that they can give you the feedback. Okay, so I'm going to play one last video. I think this is the last video I'm going to play in this session. Right, again a very small video of how costless, how least effortless prototyping can be, but how powerful it can be in terms of getting the feedback from the user on an idea, right? So this is just a 2-minute video. So let me just find that also in YouTube so that I can play with subtitles. Just a minute. Okay, I'm just trying to find that particular video. Okay, I am not able to find that video, but I will play it as a video for me. I have a video that I will play with you. So this will not have subtitles, but it's a 2-minute video, but it is very easy to understand, right? So even if you don't follow each and every line, right? Let's look at this 2-minute video, the last video by Kelly on prototyping.
So culture of prototyping. If I had to say one thing about what we need to do, I would say it has to do with this notion of a bias towards action. When we go in to kind of do an innovation audit of a company and talk about how they do different things, more often than not, they how they do things is kind of a strategy thing. They do a lot of planning. They sit around a big conference table with a bunch of with yellow pads and pencils or their laptops, and they try to think their way out. We're going to do this because we're smart people. And that probably works some of the time, but we think it's much better to kind of get out into the messy world, talk to people, build prototypes, show them to them. So you learn so much more. If I don't have any fear of failure that somebody's going to say something bad about me, I build a crummy prototype, a crummy one, not a good one, a crummy one of the ideas I have about what should happen, and then other people will help you. They'll say, geez, that's a terrible idea, right? And you say, why? You always say why, and then they tell you, and then you fix it, and then you go show it to some more people. So that's much faster to me than this long planning cycle that most people take care of it. So let's say your Sesame Street is one of your big clients, which is IDEO's case, and you're trying to come up with new iPhone apps for kids, for Sesame Street age kids. Well, you're just going to have to come up with thousands of them in order to hit some that the kids resonate with, because since we're not kids, it's really hard to tell what they'll work. But we build prototypes and we show them to kids. We have play dates with kids and we show them, and then we can figure out which one's one. So you have to quickly be able to prototype. So here's an example of how the team at IDEO came up with a way to quickly prototype iPhone apps for kids.
Cue music. So this is possible dance moves for Monster Maker. So music starts, and I'm the player, so I come in and I touch the monster, and he gives me a special dance move. I go and touch again, and he does a different one. And I can go for as long as I want, and he has a few signature moves. And when I've had enough and I'm done dancing, I touch the back button, and it pauses, and the music stops. Monster Maker.
Cool.
Sonic. Come on, Sonic.
Wow.
Get in there, Sonic.
So think about how quickly you can prototype something. No software involved. No, you just,
So did you get that prototyping? Did you get the message there? Right. So they were just kind of cut out a piece of paper and they were acting out how that app will look like. Right. So they are testing that idea immediately, right, in some easy manner. Right. Obviously, at the next stage would be they should do a better prototype or a stronger prototype, and over a period of time they'd have to develop a pilot of the app. But at this stage, they are immediately checking the idea, right, through a very, very simple manner, right, of how kids might react to that particular kind of app, right? So prototype in the design thinking process is very important, right? And it is not just prototyping. The actual word is iterative prototyping, which means you want to iterate again and again in a very costless manner. Use it as a tool of communication, use it as a tool of ideation, use it as a tool of refinement, right? So that's what prototyping is all about. So you get prototypes get more robust and refined over a period of time. So similarly, just as in the first two stages, you might have ideate various prototypes, and then finally you have to choose which prototype works, which idea works, and then you take it up and make a product or a service, and then you do it at a pilot stage, and then you kind of keep the process kind of going, right? So any questions or doubts or thoughts on the prototyping part of design thinking? So anyone, like, is prototyping clear? Ms. Zankana, now you're getting the difference I was trying to make between pilot and prototyping. Both are important, but what the spirit of what prototyping means in the design thinking process.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, I got it now.
Okay. So thank you. So as we saw, the design thinking process has three phases: exploration, which is about developing empathy or getting inspiration about the program, and then concepting, which is about ideation, and then it's about prototyping, which is to test what the ideas are. As you see, like, we keep shifting from divergent thinking and convergent thinking in each stage, moving towards a solution over a period of time, right? And it is iterative in nature, right? As I said, sometimes the design thinking process is also seen as a 5-stage process. While exploratory phase, they talk about empathy and defining the problem. The concepting phase, they call it as ideate. The prototyping phase, it is about prototype and test, right? But you see, the point is, this is a process which has certain principles or ways of thinking, and we can even internalize it, right? So we need not wait for a design thinking project or a process to do it. Some of these things can be internalized as well. So for example, the principle of divergent thinking and convergent thinking, alternating between divergent thinking and convergent thinking. The principle of whenever we do something, can we think from the user perspective, right? And developing empathy for the user, and then incorporate in how we do things, right? The principle of having a bias towards action and rapidly iterating, coming up with a cheap prototype to understand whether it works and keep refining. All these principles individually can also be very powerful in any walk of life, whether it is engineering or management. So the thing I would want to leave is to say that, which is what we teach in engineering schools, which is what we teach in design schools, etc. But the other part is the process or the thinking process, the way of approach that goes behind in it, which is the design thinking, which is valid for any part of this problem solving exercise, right? So if you'd have noticed, what we are trying to achieve in this design thinking process is to try and achieve a balance between what is desirable by the user and what is viable based on economic or engineering things, and what is feasible economically, right? In business schools, we focus a lot on feasibility, right? In engineering schools, we focus a lot on viability and feasibility, but very few time we focus on desirability, right? When I studied engineering, I never did any session which talked about the need to understand something from the user perspective. What am I designing? It can be an automotive engine. Definitely, it's important that you need to know the techniques and the thermodynamics behind it, and the design and the stress and all those analysis that goes behind it. But I would design a better engine if I know from the point of view of the user what engine means. Maybe as a driver in terms of efficiency or power, or as a rider in terms of noise. If I'm able to develop that empathy, maybe I would have designed a better engine rather than just having the engineering knowledge, right? So that is what is very important. I hope you would have noticed in this entire process, as I started, we said it is human-centered design thinking, which means you're keeping the human element, the user element in the center stage of each of the every process. right from exploration phase where you're engaging with the user. Even in concepting phase, sometimes you can, if you have multiple ideas, you can go to the user and ask, like, which of these ideas seem interesting to you, or which of these ideas you think can solve your problem. Even in the prototyping phase, again, you're interacting with the user, as you saw in the Cine Planet example, to get feedback and refine your prototype. So the user becomes very important in the entire process. So idea is to move from just design to think in terms of design thinking. I hope that part has been communicated well, and hope that you kind of find it useful when you take it back to your curriculum and see how you can integrate it, right? So I will share just one last 5 minutes. I'll share one small workshop that I tried out last year when I taught a group of executives and a group of students, MBA students. A small exercise, it is already available in the web. Any of you can easily kind of do it. When I did first time, I had hesitation whether I would be able to it will come out well. I will not deny that, but I did that, and people learned a lot. And I think it was a learning experience for me also. It is a very simple project that anyone can do. I will just share that particular, what is that particular exercise, right? And it is also available in the internet, right? So you can easily kind of do this thing. Okay, so let me find out what it is, right? Okay. So just a minute. So we have about 5 more minutes. Maybe like we might have to run out for more than 5 minutes to maybe like 10 minutes. I hope it's fine with you. Okay, so shall I share that file with you now?
Okay, sir. Okay, share it.
Okay, so this is a project you can search in Google. It's called a design a wallet project, design a purse or a wallet or a handbag project, right? So what I used to do with this worksheet is already available in Google, and it is everybody can use it, right? So it is about designing a wallet, but through this exercise, you want to teach the process, right? So what you do is divide the class into pairs of 2 people each, right? And everybody is given this workshop. So if I and Dr. Tyagarajan are paired with each other, I have to design what could be a very good wallet or a handbag or a suitcase for Dr. Tyagarajan. And Dr. Tyagarajan will interview me and design what could be the ideal wallet for me, right? So that is the exercise. So the first stage, what the exercise says, before we start, both of us will draw what we think without talking to each other is the design of the ideal wallet, right? Or the ideal purse that we want to do. The first stage, so you give 10 minutes for 5 minutes to the students, ask them to sketch it out in this worksheet. The next phase, what we do is we ask each student to interview each other, right? So for 4 minutes, I will interview Dr. and note down what are my notes about what his idea is about, what does he look forward in the ideal wallet, right? In the next 4 minutes, we will switch roles. Dr. Tyagarajan will interview me, right? And he will note down in his worksheet about his notes. Then we ask them to do it again, right? And this time, ask more deeper questions to really understand empathy. As we said, I don't want to know like what kind of wallet Dr. Tyagarajan needs. I also want to know like what it means, what does he feel about his wallet. Maybe I'll ask questions about, can you share any memorable experience about the wallet? What does money mean to him? What does he carry in it? What does it mean to him? I might ask him to open his wallet and show me what is there, right? So you want to do the second exercise for 5 minutes. He will do it to me and I will do it to you, and I will come with better notes. The next phase, based on the interview, we will capture our findings and we will write what we think is a point of view of what, based on my interview and my observation of Dr. Tyagarajan, I will write my point of view of what a good wallet can be to him, and he will do the same thing, right? Next exercise, again, we'll give 5 minutes to each of them, right? 10 minutes to 5 minutes to each of them. And I ask them to draw like 5 ideas, crazy ideas, right? Both of us will come with 5 ideas, crazy ideas. We can sketch it. And then in the next phase, we'll give 5 minutes to Dr. Tyagarajan to explain his ideas to me. And then he will take feedback on those ideas from me. And then the next 5 minutes, I will share my ideas with Dr. Tyagarajan and get feedback of on my ideas, right? Share your solutions and capture feedback. Based on this, again, we take 5 minutes each to reflect and come with a new solution. Then the next thing is about prototype. I make available chart paper, post-it notes, glue, whatever you have, right, with you. You can give it to the students and they have to come with a prototype. Now I have to develop the idea, right? I have to develop a rough prototype of the wallet or the handbag for Dr. Tyagarajan, and he will do the same thing. So 10 minutes. And after that, both of us will share feedback on the prototype. He will interact with my prototype and give us feedback. I will interact with my his prototype and give feedback. And based on that, finally, we will come with a idea of what a wallet could be. Right? So it is like you put students in pair and undergo this exercise, and then you can either do it after. I do it in two ways. First, you do whatever we have done now in terms of explaining what the process is, why we are doing, and then do this workshop to consolidate the learnings. Or you can do that workshop and then follow it up with the class of what it is, right? So for example, this is something that I did. So you can see people doing a rough prototype of bags. It is just chart paper and some clips and jump clips that they are doing. Right, again, this is so it can be a wallet, it can be anything. You can, for this particular class, I told these are our executives students in Chennai who also work. I asked them to design a bag for each other, right? Ideal bag for someone who's teaching, who's learning, and who also goes to work. I think this is a very simple exercise. All of you can try, right? I think most students will kind of like it, and because by doing they will also kind of learn. The worksheets are already available. There are even YouTube videos of classes which are follow this particular project. I would kind of really urge you to follow this. I have not tried it in the digital mode, but it should be possible in the digital mode also. The only constraint comes is in the prototyping. You have to ask students to be ready with some material to just prototype, right? So, or otherwise you can do till the visual thing, right? So, do you think this is exciting, this particular exercise? Hello? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you can try this, right? And otherwise you can also think about how can you incorporate this part of other engineering projects as well. Maybe when somebody does a final year project, we can make it, ask them to adopt the entire process to follow based on the freedom that you have in designing your own curriculum or your own rules. If you're in positions where you can influence the curriculum in your college, like if you're deans or department heads, you can see how to do that. Or it can be as simple as you can say, whenever I'm doing a project, the student should go and visit the user place where it is going to be useful before and after, and talk with the user, right? So that happens very less in engineering colleges. Maybe that's where we can start a beginning. I think we have run out of time, so I will conclude here. So I'm happy that we are talking about design thinking in engineering colleges, and I hope that this will be used and it can be kind of really make a difference to the kind of products and services that all our engineering graduates make, right? But it can be used in any walk of life. So I think it's an important critical life skill that one needs to develop currently. In US and all, people have started teaching it in schools, right? People started teaching it in schools and colleges everywhere, right? So I think it's high time that we adopt some of these elements, even if you don't call it design thinking, some of these elements and build it into our curriculum. Right, with that I will conclude. So most of these things are available on the internet. You can go and check the simple Google search. IDEO has put so much materials about design thinking. I hope this gets you interested in it, and then you'll do your own search and learn more about it. So I will conclude. Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Tyagarajan, for the opportunity as well.
So thank you, sir. Thank you for your excellent presentation. You have nicely associated with the PPTs along with the video. Really, it's a good dimension concept of design thinking. So as a faculty members, we have learned a lot of things from your side and how to develop a design process in the teaching field. It's really nice, sir.
Yes,
so now the session is open for the participant. Now, if you have any queries for the past 2 sessions from morning session, you can ask, or any other thing which is related to management also you can discuss with our speaker.
Okay, but yeah, I will answer if I can answer it. You're putting it very broadly at anything related to management, but I will answer to the extent possible.
You can please unmute yourself and you can interact.
Afternoon, sir. Dr. Nilesh also from
Sir, Nilesh sir, Dr. Nilesh sir, we are not getting your voice. Nilesh sir.
Dr. Nilesh, you can switch off your video, then the bandwidth will be better and your audio will be clear.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sir, I myself is a faculty advisor of American Society of Mechanical Engineers student section at DAY5 Nagpur, and I am happy to share with you. We are conducting such kinds of activity in our college, and it is under the SMVEC event. And under the SMVEC event, we are providing 5 problems to the students. One is toothpaste dispenser, another one is egg-breaking devices, and another one is lightweight.
Sorry, it is not very clear. It is not very clear. Maybe you have to keep the mic closer to you and speak. I don't know about others. It's not clear for me.
So we are conducting such kinds of event under the ASMEFX, and I am happy to share with you. ASME headquarter Washington, they are appreciating our effort. So I once again, due to the such kinds of appreciation, we are again conducting this event particularly for the teachers. Those are teaching for the 11th and 9th standards, because most of the innovative minds are available at 12th standard as well as 9th standards. But they have not required such kinds of support and such kinds of technical support for the particular faculty, because they are science background faculty. So we are also working under this area. I want some information about your site for the development of ATAL tinkering lab. Any other specification is required to set up in our college, because our Center of Excellence Creative Design are always developing a creative and innovative products in our college. We are registered some design and file patent of some of the same.
So sorry, I could not. It was not clear. Dr. Tyagarajan, would you like to respond?
Highlighted his product, what he has done in the university.
Sir, Dr. Nilesh, it was not clear. Maybe you can mail me if there was.
Nilesh sir.
Yes, it is audible to you, sir.
Yes, sir. But we are not getting your question, sir, correctly.
So I think what
sir, my question is, we are
Nilesh sir, briefly, that is, your question must be very brief.
Okay. Sir, we would like to work in this area, particularly for the teacher. So kindly give some guidance and some your views about it.
Okay, sir. Dr. Nilesh, sir.
Okay, I wouldn't consider myself an expert to talk about this or how to kind of build on it and teach on it, because my journey with design thinking has been only for the last 2 years and kind of learning and doing it. But what I would say is, as you pointed out, a lot of people are doing it. There is a lot of resources on the internet which talks about how to kind of do it, even at school level, at college level, how to do it. So you'd have noticed much of the resources that I picked today and shared with you are from YouTube, which is available freely. That is what I would suggest, sir. I'm sorry at this stage I'm not able to give expert inputs on how to kind of build it as a program in your institute. But if there are any questions related to the concepts that we talked today, if there is anything unclear, I'm happy to kind of address them now. Other questions might be very difficult for me to address immediately in this forum.
Yes, sir. Because we are closely related to National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. about some of the projects we also completed under the guidance of Dr. Shashank.
So I think that's great that you're doing it. Maybe I'm saying I'm not the person to answer your question. You're better people like NID to talk about it. I want to spend this time, Dr. Tyagarajan, if you allow me, to talk about any concepts that were not clear that we discussed today. Or the process. Is that fine, sir, Dr. Tyagarajan?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have covered all the concept. Design thinking concept we have nicely covered. But the thing entrepreneurship only is missing, I think, in my point of view.
See, okay, because I wanted, as I told, we discussed, I wanted to talk about the design thinking process because entrepreneurship is, what is entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship is coming up with a new business idea and making it work, right? So design thinking, the elements of design thinking process will apply to entrepreneurship whether you start as a startup or you come with the entrepreneurship within an existing organization. So for example, somebody talked about the word called minimum viable product. This is already part of that prototyping part, right? Or fail fast, fail often is also part of entrepreneurship. So for me, I don't necessarily see a difference in these two processes. Both are tightly interlinked. Of course, there are other processes like in entrepreneurship, like how do we raise funding, how do we go to market. All those things are part of entrepreneurship as well. Because this focus was on design thinking, I focused on that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so my email ID is there in my institute website. It is mani@imtrichy.ac.in. mani@imtrichy.ac.in, and it is anyway there available on the website. You can look into it, and then if you want to reach out, you can always kind of reach out. I'll also be happy to understand your experience of doing any of these workshops or teaching in your college.
So thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I think all of us are kind of moving towards lunch also. It's been a long 3 hours. So thanks for your patience.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tyagarajan.
So participant, now you can fill the feedback form which is already posted in the chat box.
Okay.
And one kind attention to all the participants. You have the validity function at 2 p.m. So kindly assemble at 2 p.m. We have the validity function. After that, we will post the questions. Overall feedback as well as the question. Sir, Professor Manikandan, sir.
Thank you very much. So
Thank you, sir. If you wish, you can sign out, sir.
Yeah. Wish you all the
Thank
best validation and wish you all a very happy Diwali as well. Okay. So thank you.
Sir. Thank you.
Bye.